everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Tuesday, October 11th, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some great interviews with some fantastic guests from around the world. So stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with the show with our Techstrong News recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we're going to go over to Alan, where he will speak with Dana Waldman, CEO at Quokka, about officially rebranding from CryptoWire to Quokka and launching QScout, a BYOD and privacy-first security solution. Alan will then speak with Chris Weisopal, founder and CTO at Veracode, to discuss Veracode's software bill of materials API that makes it easier to provide visibility for developers when using third-party components. Then Alan will sit down with Micheline Nijme, CMO at JFrog, where Micheline shares a preview of what to expect from JFrog's 2022 International Developer Conference, the Swamp Up City Tour. We will then be airing the first episode of our new series, The CD Pipeline. Our inaugural episode will trace the evolution of continuous delivery, starting with the state of pipelines, past, present, and future. Alan Schimmel and Lori LaRusso are joined by Dibyo Mukherjee and Lee Bernick of Google, as well as Andrea Fertoli of IBM, as they discuss the Tekton project about CD and how it has transformed since its inception in the early 2000s. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on to tell us more about some of our upcoming webinars that we have for you. Then next up, we are airing episode 2 of our new series, Engineering the Change. This series follows the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. We will then air episode 3 of Techstrong Research Review. In this episode, Mike Rothman and Mitch Ashley unpack the push for most vendors to try to position their offerings as a platform and the reality that customers need to determine what is a tool and what is a platform, and must also be wary of vendor lock-in. We will then wrap up this broadcast with 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews Pete Lund, Vice President of Product for OT Security at OpsWatt, as Pete explains how neural networks will improve cybersecurity by detecting anomalies using algorithms. Then Mike will interview John Geeter, Chief Product and Technology Officer for Archivist, as John explains the role blockchain platforms will play in building SBOMs to better secure software supply chains. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy. Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for October 11th. First up, the United States Commerce Department is increasing its export controls on China's ability to get advanced computing chips, develop supercomputers, and make semiconductors. The Commerce Department has stated that these updates are part of efforts to protect U.S. national security, as these chips can be used to create military systems such as weapons of mass destruction. China has since criticized the U.S. on these new export controls, as China cannot currently make enough high-end chips used in most smartphones, in spite of spending heavily to develop its own producers. Next, President Biden has signed an executive order promising EU citizens better data privacy. The order builds on a preliminary agreement to end a years-long battle over the safety of EU citizens' data that is stored within U.S. companies. The original agreement was deemed unacceptable to regulators as it didn't resolve core issues as far as privacy is concerned. This new order includes a commitment to strengthen the safeguards and adds a multi-layer redress system for EU citizens to seek redress more easily. The EU has struck down data privacy frameworks twice in the past, but this one will be more encompassing than those previously mentioned. While on the subject of the EU lawmakers have voted in favor of new legislation that would require all mobile phones sold in the EU to use USB-C ports by 2024. That means all ports such as micro USB and Apple's Lightning port will have to change in order to continue selling in one of the world's more lucrative global markets. The legislation's goal is to reduce e-waste, which according to estimates says around 11,000 tons of chargers end up in landfills each year. This being said, Apple is one of the only major smartphone makers that still hasn't switched over to USB Type-C, so this legislation could impact it the most. In other news, Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, is the latest company to be impacted by a major crypto theft this year. A Binance-linked blockchain was involved in a $570 million hack that resulted in Binance suspending its blockchain network, BNB Smart Chain, after hackers stole 2 million BNB cryptocurrency tokens. Of the funds stolen, 100 million was moved off the chain, while the rest has been frozen. Binance has stated that the theft was due to hackers targeting a cross-chain bridge, the infrastructure that allows users to exchange crypto between different blockchains. This being said, some of the largest thefts of this year have resulted due to attacking these bridges. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at why ransomware is still such a big issue. Ransomware hurts large companies and can even drive smaller ones out of business, and it is even now easier and cheaper than ever to launch an attack. This being said, organizations have multiple opportunities to block a ransomware outbreak. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. On Container Journal, we have an article giving a deep dive into role-based access control in Kubernetes. Whether you are a security professional starting to learn about Kubernetes or an engineer building with it, it is imperative that you understand the basic systems behind Kubernetes. Role-based access control is the de facto mode for access control these days, and understanding how it works can help users provision the permissions that their teams need. To learn more, go to containerjournal.com. Finally, on DevOps.com, we have an article looking at how Endor Labs has launched a platform that applies graph analysis to identify the depth of dependencies that exist within an application. This tool, known as the Dependency Lifecycle Management Platform, will make it easier for organizations to manage dependencies within applications that can involve up to thousands of components. To learn more, go to DevOps.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV segment. I'm really happy to introduce you to a first-time guest here on Techstrong TV, a company you maybe have not heard of, but you're going to hear the whole story around this company in just a moment. Let me introduce you to Dana Waldman. Dana's with a company called Quokka. Hey Dana, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me, Alan. It's fun to be here, actually.
I hope you say that after we're done, but I'm sure you will. So Dana, Quokka, new name, but it's a company that, some of us may have heard of before this. Why don't you give us the scoop here? And while we're at it, we might as well find out a little bit about you as well.
Well, sure. Thanks for giving me the chance to talk about Quokka, because I'm obviously pretty excited here. Quokka's actually been around a while, and we were formerly known as CryptoWire, but we recently rebranded ourselves as we've started introducing a whole new platform and service. But we're in the mobile cybersecurity space, so we're all about giving peace of mind to both users and enterprises alike in the area of digital security and privacy. That's kind of what Quokka is all about. And much like Quokka, I started in the federal space, as did Quokka. My career first was in the federal space, focused on taking technologies that were developed from the government sector and inserting them into the commercial sector where we could have a much broader benefit of users. And that's exactly what we did with Quokka. Quokka also started in the federal space. It was initially funded by the government, groups like DARPA and the Department of Homeland Security and others. And we realized there's a huge opportunity to take what we're doing and get into the emerging world of convergence of your digital work life and your digital personal life and give you a degree of privacy and protection and lower your risk without really intruding on your privacy. And that's really what Quokka is all about.
Excellent. Great backdrop there. Dana, so look, a lot of people talk about mobile security and we help with mobile security. Let's peel the onion back a few layers and really kind of, if you don't mind, dive into what Quokka does and how it does it.
Yeah, sure. Happy to dive in. First of all, if you think about it, more and more things are trending to the operating systems that run our mobile devices, Android and iOS. But they're not just cell phones and tablets anymore. Lots of devices run Android and iOS, things like your TV, if you have a Peloton bike, your car, all of these things, more and more there's a convergence onto these operating systems to drive more and more things in your daily life. And Quokka is all about providing what we call proactive privacy protection. That's a lot of P's in a row, proactive privacy protection. And that's what we're putting at the forefront of digital security. And the whole idea with what we're trying to do at Quokka, less fear, more peace of mind, giving you much more confidence with a lot less worry. So it's proactive digital security that makes you, whether you're an enterprise or an end user working at an enterprise, an organization or an employee, make you feel safe and secure with what's going on in your digital life. And that's kind of what Quokka is all about.
Okay. How does it do it, though? Is it an app on the phone? Is it some sort of SaaS thing? I mean, we have a fairly technical audience. They want to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
So we're a SaaS platform, and we have been for some time, by the way. Quokka is not a new company. Quokka has been around over 10 years. We've developed a series of engines and technology stacks in those engines, all about searching out vulnerabilities, providing protection before bad events happen, and giving you, the end user, or you, the enterprise, insight into those things before they happen so that you can proactively protect yourself so that those bad things don't actually happen. That's kind of what we're all about. And we do that as a SaaS company. So
are you scanning these devices for vulnerabilities then, and then alerting to vulnerabilities? Is that fair?
There's a combination of things in there, Alan. We understand the apps that run on each device. We analyze each and every app. We make a digital twin in the cloud of the apps that are running.
Okay.
And we add a layer of intelligence to take all those discrete pieces of information about each and every app that's running, along with the operating system itself and the unique instantiation of that device's operating system and sort of the hidden apps that make the operating system work. We add a layer of intelligence across all of that, and that allows us to proactively tell you, here are your risk points. Here's what you should do to eliminate those risks. And the beauty of what we do is we do it all without needing access to your private data. So we're not looking at your personal data, and we're not sharing that data with anybody.
Got it. All right, now we're getting into the good stuff. So it seems like what Quokka is able to do is to take your unique configuration and literally create a digital twin and call it a sandbox or whatever in the cloud, right? And say, okay, here's this configuration, this unique configuration. We analyzed it, and here's where you have potential vulnerabilities and or other, insecure kind of configs or whatever, and this is what you need to do to fix it.
That's exactly right. And the beauty of it is we're able to do this in advance of something bad happening, as opposed to waiting for something bad to happen and then analyzing that. We're able to do this ahead of time, what we call proactively.
Yep. I love it. So, look, I've been in security a long time, so I know what do we, the nature of the beast today is that these devices, configurations, their app lineups, the versions of the apps they run, they're changing daily, if not minute by minute, hour by hour. How does Quokka stay up on latest changes and so forth?
Right. That whole thing takes place in our engine in the cloud all the time. It's running in the background. So you can know with Quokka that you have the latest information about exactly what's on your device and exactly where the threats are. And that's kind of the beauty of what we do. And it's a continuous process for us.
I love that. Now, you mentioned that whether you're on the enterprise or an individual, they both use Quokka, but who's kind of the target audience here?
Yeah, so our primary focus is protecting the enterprise to enable BYOD. We want to enable enterprises to allow the employees of the enterprise to use their own devices and access corporate resources. So we have to balance. The enterprise wants to know it's protected as these various users on all these various devices are accessing their corporate resources as part of their daily interaction. And at the same time, we want to assure the employee, think of them as the consumer, that what's going on their device is protected. So it's a little bit of both. We help the enterprise and we help the end users who are essentially consumers. And that's why we have to deliver Quokka and develop Quokka with the consumer mindset, a light touch, friendly, easy to use protection that can also help the enterprise at the same time.
I like it. And you mentioned, of course, the sort of a government heritage here. Is government still a big user base for Quokka?
Yes, the feds are big customers of ours, actually, as are a whole bunch of commercial customers. But we have a terrific presence in the Fed, dating back to the early days of the company. The company was started in academia, actually, and then funded by the feds. And now we have traction across, almost every sector you can think of in the commercial market.
Great. Another question for you, Dana, or another area I'd like to touch on is, it used to be when we said mobile, we spoke only about phones. It was really phones. But today there's tablets, there's all these kind of quasi-mobile devices, whether it's watches or things, if we can call it, right? Connected things. I imagine Quokka, primarily is also working on phones, but what other kinds of devices is Quokka, either working on now, or maybe you guys have plans to work on in the future?
Yeah, you raise a really good point, Alan. If you really look at what's happening in sort of the macro trends today, the trend is more and more towards lots of things that run the operating systems that used to be known just for mobile. So it's almost a misnomer to call them mobile anymore, right? If you're running Android and iOS, then you're right up our alley because that's the DNA of Quokka. And nowadays, you're absolutely right. It's not just phones. It's not just tablets. It's your television. It's the smart appliances in your house. It's your car, which I guess is mobile. It's your stationary bike, which feels mobile when I'm pedaling, but I don't go anywhere. It's all of those things.
If you have that screen or not. But yeah, right. I get it.
I mean, we're doing our annual virtual event called DevOps Experiences, November 16th. And one of the areas we're exploring is we call it the DevOps of things, right? Because there's there's a lot more connected things than there are people in the world today. And that's growing exponentially, right? I think was it 55 billion connected devices by 2025 or something like that. And a good percentage of them are running either Android or some Linux derivative or something like that. And they all need protection.
That's exactly right. With the Internet of Things, the numbers go even higher and higher. So this trend is happening. It's more than a trend; it's a reality. And so being able to protect against that becomes important. And being able to do it in the right way with a light touch and protecting the user privacy, we felt that was essential. And that's part of why we branded the company the way we did. Actually, we wanted to sort of send that message of protection without intrusion.
Excellent. I love it. You know what, Dana, we didn't tell, but we've use the name Quokka, but look, anytime you got a Q, you always got to worry about spelling, right? There's always a U nearby. But why don't you spell it out for our audience here so they can go check it out?
Sure. It's Quokka, Quokka, and you can see us at quokka.io.
.io.
Correct.
Someone had the .com.
We like .io because that's what tech companies are doing.
Well, a lot of people do. I mean, that's
That's the trend today is to go IO. Just wondering, like, is there, if you don't mind me asking, the name Quokka, is there some sort of hidden meaning, or where'd that come from?
Yeah, Quokka is an animal found off the coast of Western Australia, actually. And we felt the Q and the image associated with that was something we could build upon, because we're all about less fear and more peace of mind, right? And less worry and concern and more confidence. And we felt this notion of Quokka helped provide that, actually, and it was something we could build on. And that's why we went with that branding.
Good. I like the name. It's very cool.
Thank
It's
you.
Quokka.io. It's Quokka.
Correct.
Go check it out. As Dana mentioned, they do sell a lot to enterprises. They have individual plans as well, I assume. And, if mobile security is important to all of us, might be worth checking out. Dana, I want to thank you for coming on Techstrong TV. And, as things continue to evolve here at Quokka, come back and keep us posted.
Well, thanks, Alan. I appreciate it, and I will do that. I will come back. It'll be fun to do it.
Absolutely. Dana Waldman of Quokka, Quokka.io, here on Techstrong TV. We'll take a break now. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. Really happy to be joined by my friend Chris Swisopol here. Chris doesn't need an introduction to our audience. He's probably been on here at least a dozen times, but beyond Techstrong TV, Chris is one of the original kind of rock stars in security, dating back to his early days, but he's really not that old.
I'm pretty old, Alan.
Getting older. Yeah, we're all getting older, Chris. What can I tell you? But anyway, hey man, welcome. I hope all is well with you.
Things are good. It's great to be here talking with you again.
Yeah, and I neglected. Chris is, of course, one of the co-founders of Vericode. Again, one of the pioneers in AppSec and what would they do, and even before Vericode. I'm drawing a blank. I'm truly getting old.
At stake and
for
law.
that stake. Yes. From there and a bunch of other stuff. So, Chris, before we jump into what we want to talk about today, wanted to just ask, what's happening in Vericode, if there's any kind of updates or anything you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, sure. So, some of the recent stuff is, we have, enhanced our SBOM APIs. So, you can query all the SBOMs you've generated across all your applications with an easy to use API call. Makes it nice and easy to manage and integrate it into other SBOM solutions. And I think just yesterday we announced our container security scanning support. We've scanned containers for open source components from the application that would be in the container, which is a partial solution. But now we've rounded it out and we scan all the different layers of the container for open source. We scan for configuration issues like Kubernetes configuration and other infrastructure as code configuration. And we look for secrets that you may not want to have exposed in your container. So we're pretty excited about that because it's a key part of cloud native AppSec. You have to be able to scan containers. So we're doing that now.
Look, cloud native, I was telling someone on our team today, I managed as a figurehead our webinar program. And so I tend to look at a list of all the webinars and all the registrations. And it really kind of jumped out at me that all of the cloud native security, Kubernetes related webinars are some of our biggest draws, right? In terms of registrations. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something.
It's because it's new, right? So everyone has to learn about it. Like the developers are always, a couple years ahead of the security people. Like they figure this stuff out, they start building, they start deploying, and the security team's like, what's going on here? You're deploying containers. How do I don't know what's in there. How do I secure that thing that you're using? Mm-hmm. So we're always playing catch up, I feel, in the security space. The developers are always ahead, but that makes sense, right? Not all technologies are going to get traction, right? Not every technology someone invents is going to be used in a widespread way. So people aren't going to build solutions for every single way someone figures out how to build apps. I don't know how many different languages have come and gone. Like you don't really hear about Ruby apps anymore, right?
No, but for a while they were.
It was the new cool.
Ruby,
it was the new
Ruby
cool
on
thing.
Rails, yeah.
I mean, the issue is, and it goes to the nature of the security business, is we can't afford to get too far out ahead of our skis without wasting cycles, and we don't have the cycles to waste, right? On something that's not going to pan out, frankly.
I mean, that's what I have to do managing, an engineering capability at Veracode is like, we have so many engineers. What are we going to build, right? What is going to make the most impact for the widest range of our customers? And, there's a million little frameworks out there, little languages out there, different APIs, but you have to pick the ones that are the most widespread.
Absolutely. Look, even taking it up a level to the whole AppSec space, for a long time, last year, the year before, Chris, a common thing I heard was, the OWASP top 10 doesn't change. It's the same stuff over and over again. And AppSec is stale, and AppSec, is not. But you know what? SBOMs you mentioned, container security you mentioned, API security you mentioned.
Yeah.
These are all kind of new frontiers within AppSec that the same old isn't going to cut it, right?
No, absolutely. The way that apps are being built is constantly changing. The languages change slowly, but the way the architecture of the apps changes more quickly because someone invents a new technology, people want to take advantage of it. So, microservices is another one. We have to secure microservices-based applications. So you got a lot of different pieces, a lot of different processes communicating with each other, each over APIs. Each one needs to authenticate and encrypt its connections and essentially protect itself, right? And that's a new paradigm too. So I feel like there's a lot of exciting things happening in AppSec.
There most certainly is. But let's circle back to SBOMs. So I got to admit, I'm a little surprised to hear that you're this far along with being able to do this, because my fear was that everyone was going to go out and build their own SBOM format, their own SBOM language, their own SBOM, syntax, and that we would have an SBOM Tower of Babel for a while, where my SBOM is not compatible with your SBOM, and how many SBOM readers do I need? It sounds like we've made progress here, though.
Yeah, so it happened actually over a long period of time. I think maybe going back 4 years with the NTIA, which is part of the Department of Commerce, having a project to standardize about how people are going to communicate bills of materials for software. And that kind of went along, puttered along at a slow pace, and people thought it was, it is eventually going to get here. And then it came on us really quickly with Biden's executive order from, about a little over a year ago, with the cybersecurity executive order saying, government, software customers should be requesting SBOMs from their suppliers, and suppliers need to be able to deliver an SBOM. And that's sort of like making it a requirement kicked everything into high gear. And we had customers coming to us that sold into the federal government saying, you need to support this. We know you're scanning our open source, you're finding vulnerabilities in open source, but we have to be able to communicate to our customers now what we're doing. So we want SBOM support. So we came out with SBOM support earlier this year. As far as the Tower of Babel goes, we picked one format to start with. We figured we're going to support all the ways that, people are going to be using it. But we picked the one that our customers said that they wanted and made the most sense for them, which was the Cyclone DX format. There is another format that is acceptable that NIST has decided is an acceptable format for the government to receive this information in, and that's the SPDX format. So we have two. Two is better than a lot. It's kind of painful that it's not a single standard. But I think most products that are dealing with SBOMs will be able to create both formats and receive both formats. And, even though they're not 100%, you can't convert perfectly 100% from one to the other. They're pretty close. And it's a lot better than sort of VHS and Betamax, right? Where you have a physical difference in format. It's software. Mm-hmm. So you can convert easily. It's not, converting Betamax to VHS would require a lot of hardware.
So, Chris, I don't want to make you feel old, but a lot of people out here probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Yes, those are videotape formats. But I do. Don't worry.
So there was this thing called videotape before the DVD, and people are like, "What's a DVD?"
Yeah.
My son found the whole concept of an optical disc and a CD, and he's 14. He's not that young. He found this fascinating. He's like, wow, you can actually put data onto a physical device.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was fascinated by it. He's like, I want to burn CDs.
So when we moved about a year ago, and I actually found 2 DVD burners, like portable DVD burners. I forgot I had them. And I showed them to my son as well. And I was like, we could record stuff on here. And he's like, yeah, but Dad, where are we going to play it?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, that is a problem. That's a problem. But
it's good to know we have the capability. Crazy. But yes, we're talking, we say Betamax, VHS, we're talking about incompatible formats. And of course, Sony had the Betamax format. It was probably a superior format.
That's what people say, yeah.
Specs.
But it lost because the VHS consortium had better marketing. Much like Windows and OS2, to show you how old I am.
Exactly. It's about marketing, right?
I loved OS2. Anyway, let's talk more about SBOMs, though.
Can I be real with you for a second, Chris? Here's my fear. That SBOMs become our equivalent of the tags on mattresses and pillows. That they say, do not remove, it's a federal offense or whatever, but no one pays attention to them. How do we get people to kind of use them and pay attention to them?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of a whole hierarchy of different usages of SBOMs. I mean, I think the way it was envisioned was a very sophisticated customer, like say, like a healthcare chain or something like that, which has a big security team and is sophisticated, can manage, when new vulnerabilities in open source come out, they can really manage and understand where they have products at risk, where they need to talk to vendors about those products at risk. And it allows the consumer of technology, a sophisticated consumer, to better manage the risk coming from vendors. And this is something that is, been growing over the last several years. Back, 20 years ago, there was no open source risk problem, right? Like hardly any open source was used, so it wasn't a big problem. Now we see that 97% of a Java application is open source libraries, if you count by lines of code. not by code executed, and we can talk a little bit about that, but by lines of code. It's the vast majority of code today is open source. So there's a lot of risk in there that is constantly changing as new vulnerabilities are found and there's new known vulnerabilities. And, consumers should be able to manage that. They should be able to demand that against their vendors. But the reality is, a lot of consumers, even a small bank maybe, or a small enterprise, they don't have the capability to really manage the SBOMs that vendors may give them if they asked for it. So I think on the low end, though, there is some benefit. If a vendor has an SBOM and can deliver an SBOM to you, that says something about their development process, that they know what's in their code. They're likely managing the vulnerabilities in that if they're willing to expose to you what versions they're using, just like a manual penetration test. No one hands a manual penetration test to a customer that has high and critical vulnerabilities in it, right? They fix the problems that the testing company found, and they get them to retest and show a clean bill of health. That's a good thing because it shows that they fixed things that were found and they're looking for things with manual testing. I think on the low end, I think the SBOM can serve the same purpose. It just shows evidence that the vendor has control of the open source they're using and they're managing the risk in it.
Excellent. Let's talk specifically about the Veracode SBOM offering now. I think we've done a good job of sort of laying out the SBOM landscape, if you will. What exactly are you guys doing here?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're able to package up in the SBOM, the Cyclone DX format, the list of components and the versions that is in an application, right? So in an application, a Java WAR file or something that you would deliver to a customer, you can also deliver alongside that an SBOM in a file format that they can then consume. We can talk a little bit about how they're going to consume this, but we can do that. The other thing we can do is we have this API and policies so that the software creator, whether it's an enterprise creating software for themselves or a vendor that's going to ship software, can manage all the open source across all the different applications they're creating. So let's take a bank, for example. They have, let's say they have 500 applications that they build for internal use. When a new vulnerability comes out in something for Log4j, they need to understand where they have Log4j, where they have the vulnerable version, and then manage the process of fixing it. So if you have SBOMs, then you can look across your whole portfolio and understand where you have that risk. So part of the SBOM idea is transparency to a customer, but the other part of it is managing your own internal open source risk. And it can also be license risk too. You could say, hey, wait a minute, this license isn't acceptable to the way we're deploying this software or we're using this software. So I need to understand what licenses are used. So that's another part of how SBOMs can be used.
Absolutely. Chris, the Veracode SBOM solutions are available today?
Right now?
Yes, they're available today. All of our software composition analysis customers, which is the technology used to understand what open source you're using, all those customers can generate an SBOM file. So they can generate an SBOM on the command line. They can call an API and they can call an API to get it, as long as we've analyzed that application with our SEA product. That SBOM is available. Another interesting thing that we actually launched, I should have mentioned this, is we've really been beefing up our IDE. So our IDE plugins allow the developer to actually just point at an open source package a library that they want to use, and we can do software composition analysis on it. We can identify what it is, what version it is, tell them what vulnerabilities are in that version, perhaps recommend a different version if there are vulnerabilities, and generate an SBOM, all from within the IDE. So you can think of this as the security team managing risk across, the enterprise, across an application security platform. But the other way to think about it is, you want the developer to make good choices, because the developer is selecting what open source they're using. And, it'd be nice if the developer was, empowered to understand the risk in there and select other libraries rather than it show up in, a dashboard for, the security team at a later date. And they have to say, hey, wait a minute, you need to fix this. So we're trying to shift, the management of what open source you're using to the left, so developers can be empowered to understand the risk in their open source.
Absolutely. Excellent stuff. Hey, Chris, I want to thank you for coming on. We're over time anyway. I want to mention that, we recorded this. By the time you're watching this out there, the SBOM stuff's available now. The container security functionality that Chris mentioned, it'll also be available at Veracode, and probably in the next day or two, we'll have a follow-up with Veracode on the container security solutions as well. So stay tuned for that. Chris, I don't know. I'll definitely see you at RSA, but that's next April. But we'll be at Kubecon. I don't know if you guys are heading up that way.
Around container
I don't.
and so
No, I'm
forth.
not going to KubeCon. I am going to AWS reInvent.
reInvent
So
right after
if you're there,
Thanksgiving, maybe there in Vegas. But until then, man, great seeing you. Be well, be safe, and thanks so much.
Thanks, Alan. It's great talking with you.
Also, veracode.com, VERACODE, to go check out all of the stuff Chris told us about. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another Techstrong TV segment. I'm so happy to be joined by a frog for our next segment. It's my friend Micheline Nijme. Micheline, of course, is the CMO over at JFrog, home of the frogs. And, I know Micheline forever and ever, but this may be the very first Techstrong TV interview we've done, isn't it?
Micheline.
It sure is. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you. I don't know how you talk Shlomi into not doing this and letting you do it.
It was hard. It was hard.
But it's great to have you on. So, Micheline, before we jump into Swamp Up and exciting things going on, look, there might be folks out here that are not familiar with JFrog. And why don't we maybe set a baseline of JFrog, what you guys do and about and everything else?
Absolutely. Well, JFrog is really the single system of record that manages all enterprises' software updates from development to deployment. And really, our platform provides a centralized management with really a unified experience for the entire SDLC. And this can include, binaries, containers, images, and so on. And so, when you think about today's digital age, software really drives business innovation. And so the maturity, speed, quality, and security of this software delivery process has become a key differentiator. And that's what JFrog does. It manages the release from development to deployment, all the way through, from securing it, managing it, and distributing it, as well as deploying it.
Excellent. I think most in our audience, they're DevOps people. Of course, they know JFrog. But I just wanted to throw that out there if anyone is wondering. Now, JFrog, of course, has always been known for their great user events called Swamp Up. I've been to a few myself, and I can attest personally to how great they are. But this year, you guys are doing something a little bit more than usual, which is instead of just having one big swamp up, you're actually bringing swamp up to the people rather than them necessarily coming to one central swamp up. You're doing a whole swamp up tour. Why don't you, if you don't mind, Micheline, share with our audience a little bit?
I would love to. This year when we planned, or last year, actually, end of last year when we planned our Swamp Up tours or Swamp Up events, we decided, knowing that people are not ready to fly, there are budget constraints, or they may have travel restrictions given all the COVID issues we've been having the last couple of years. We wanted to take our events to them, to the city near them. And so we've taken these tours. They're one-day in-person events that brings together the community of developers and DevOps engineers, as well as security professionals, really providing them the latest trends and technical expertise. And this year, I'm super excited. We're bringing industry-leading speakers like people from Netflix, BMW, Red Hat, Volvo, and many others. And there's some few surprises. And really, we wanted to bring them all together and excited to really talk about 3 areas of what we're seeing in terms of trends. And we will be hosting our first one. We had one in San Diego in May, and we're hosting our second one in New York next week. So I'm super excited on October 18th, followed by London and Munich.
Absolutely. So the one let's focus on the New York one because that's about a week away. How do people register to attend? Is there a cost? I mean, how does one get to there?
Yeah, it's a very nominal fee. It's they can come to our JFrog website, swampup.jfrog.com is the exact page where they can register. So there's still room to attend next week. So for those who are local, we look forward to hosting them and really talk about and have them hear about some of the latest innovations that we're going to be sharing.
Absolutely. And the thing about Swamp Up, forgive me, Micheline, I'm going to jump in here. The thing about Swamp Up, yes, hearing about some of the latest innovations and what's happening with JFrog is a big reason to attend. But other big reasons to attend is it's really a great sense of community. I laugh, I say the frogs. It's not just the people who work for JFrog. It's the people in the community who are frogs, if you will, right? Who have seen the company go through its maturation, its evolution into what it is today. But it's so much about seeing people who have a common experience to you, who are faced with the same challenges, who want to overcome or are looking for the solution to the same problems that you are. And it's about the personalities there. Right? Baruch is there with his hat. I know my friend John Willis is talking there. I don't know Shlomi. I'm going to assume Shlomi and Yov and
Fred. Yeah, Yov will be there.
It's almost like a family get together, but extended family, right? Not just that nuclear thing.
Alan, you hit it right on the head. It's exactly why we wanted to bring it back in person. We were very adamant that we were tired of going virtual, and we wanted to make sure that every single person had the opportunity to come and meet with us, but really connect with each other. And so we were very adamant in terms of how we want to take these city tours and bring everyone together. And you're right, we have several folks coming in from all over the world, flying in just for this event. So we're excited.
Absolutely. So October 18th is in New York. Not to put you on the spot, but do you have the dates for the two after that over in Europe?
Yeah, we have London, October 20th, and then Munich, we're going to head over on October 24th. So we're really taking the frogs on the tour. We're greenifying those cities for sure.
Absolutely. That's great. And just to reemphasize, it's swampup.jfrog.com. Where people can get information. And whether you're in the London area on October 20th or in the Munich area, October 24th, or New York next week, October 18th.
Exactly.
There's a JFrog Swamp Up there for you. Micheline, it's all exciting stuff. Just wanted to, you mentioned some of the other things, and I don't want to talk out of school or say anything we're not supposed to talk about, but any hints as to what people might hear or see or find out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited about these coming events. And when we built the agenda and said training sessions will be available as well, really, we built it based on our attendees' experience and interests. And as you know, JFrog very well, our platform is made up of 3 cores: DevOps, security, and IoT. And so what we're going to be covering is those 3 areas, and specifically to call out security, which we have lots of great things to hear about next week. It's really the focus is around addressing the complex problem of managing and securing the software supply chain with the recent attacks that we've seen in the last year or so. I'm not sure if you've heard about this prior, but our security research team have tracked over 700 different open source software supply chain attacks in the past year, 2 of which were zero-day threats. And so because of these increased threats, it's creating this complexity and really widening the gap of developers, security, and ops teams. And if you think about it, all 3 organizations have more complexity to manage. Developers now have targets on their back. If you think about the tools and the huge amount of open source libraries and binaries they have to manage, DevOps teams are expected to manage security more than they ever have because they're running the software supply chain. And then security teams obviously are adding more and more tools, really slowing development and truly innovation, in my point of view. So this is what we're addressing. This is what we want to cover next week, is because JFrog, we feel there's a better way to manage this. There's a better way to, address this new era of cybersecurity and some of those DevOps challenges. So I'm super excited to give you all a sneak peek next week when you guys join us. The attendees who will be there, looking forward to it, to sharing the news.
So, yeah, it's a confession, right? So I'm from the security world. I've spent 25 years in security before I started DevOps.com. One of the reasons I got involved or was attracted to DevOps is because I thought it was a better way to do security. My friend John Willis, who's speaking at Swamp Up, him and Damon Edwards, who was the founder of Rundeck, but also one of the very early DevOps Illuminati, if you will. They used to do a presentation on DevOps: faster, better, more secure. You can't have all 3, something like that. It might not be not word for word, but that is the promise of DevOps, right? Is that we can build more secure software by automating more, by doing the kind of fundamental DevOps, framework that we all have, grown around recently. Of course, the whole software supply chain issue and software supply chain security problem has blown up in the last 2 years or so, right? And so we see these things with SBOM, right? Software bill of materials, and the government, the White House getting involved and everything, and it's on everyone's plate. What saddens me, though, is that issues like that are wedge issues that are breaking apart developers from ops folks, from security folks, when exactly what's needed right now is to come together, not to break apart. So, I'm hoping these are the kinds of things that we'll see at Swamp Up, right, of how we all work together to make this. And quite frankly, developers do have targets on their back. And just throwing it on their shoulders and saying, this is your problem, is not the answer either. But I guess you have to go to Swamp Up to find out more, right?
Yeah, we believe in a unified approach. And so we'll be sharing some sneak peek into what will be available at Swamp Up for all of our attendees. And we're excited to share that. So don't want to give away too much today, but please join us at Swamp Up next week.
I forgot to mention, what about my friend Stephen Chin? Will he be there?
Steve Chin will be there. Yep. And John Willis, as you said, is a family friend of the Frogs at this point. Will be joining us amongst others. Yep, for sure.
All right. Micheline, thank you so much for coming on and giving us a little Swamp Up preview. Just real quickly, October 18th, New York. October 20th is London. And Munich is October 24th?
That's exactly correct.
Not bad. I got it. All right. Hey, I hope, and I should also mention, though, that Kubecon is in Detroit around October 25th, 26th. And I'm pretty sure Jay Frog will be there as well.
Yes, we're also going to be greenifying Detroit. So we're going to go there in a large force, and you can check us out at our booth there as well.
And we'll be doing video live from there. So hopefully someone from the Frogs will come over. We'll check in live. Anyway, Micheline, thanks for coming on. You can come on anytime you want. Just let us know, and we'd love to have you.
Good luck at Swamp Up.
Thank you, Alan.
Bye-bye. All right, we're going to take a break on Techstrong. We'll be right back.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
Hey everyone, welcome to the CD Pipeline, continuously delivering software from A to Z. This is a brand new video series we're running here on Techstrong TV, and we're partnering with our good friends at the CDF, the CD Foundation, part of the Linux Foundation, to bring you this show on a regular basis where we're going to talk about relevant topics to folks who are interested in continuous delivery and continuously delivering software from A to Z, and hence the tagline. Let me introduce you to our very first panel. We're very excited. I'm going to get into the subject matter in a second, but I want to introduce you to our very first panel here today, and we're going to start off with Andrea Frittoli. And if I mispronounce Andrea, I apologize, but why don't you give them your name and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Andrea Frittoli. That was really good. Thanks, Alan. I'm a developer advocate at IBM, and I've been working on Tecton for a few years, I guess since 2018. And yeah, I'm a maintainer of the project and part of the governance team.
Thank you, and Andrea, welcome. Next up, I want to introduce you all to Lee Bernick. Lee, welcome, and maybe if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to the audience.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. I'm Lee. I'm a maintainer of the Pipelines project. I've been working on Tecton for about a year now, and I'm a senior software engineer at Google.
Fantastic, and Lee, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And then next up, we have Divya Muhaji, and I'm sure I messed that up. I apologize. Divya, why don't you say it right and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Divya Mukherjee. I'm a software engineer at Google. I have been with Tecton since 2019 or so. So it's been about 3 years and so. A maintainer of the Tecton project. I'm also part of the governance governing board team with Andrea. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you and welcome for joining, and thank you for doing what you do here. Last but not least, I want to introduce you to my co-host on this show. Not only on this show, but on the whole series. She's a person I've known for years already. She is, well, I'm going to let her introduce herself. Lori LaRusso. Lori, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you for letting the CDF be a part of your Techstrong TV series. We're very excited to be launching the CD pipeline with you. So my name is Lori LaRusso. I am the open source program manager at JFrog and the marketing outreach chair at CDF. So super excited to be talking about our projects and continuous delivery with you and the audience.
Fantastic. And I'm so can't tell you how happy I am to have you on board with me, Lori. This is kind of really cool. We worked together, at various events for years, and having you on here is great. And thank you for what you're doing with CDF. For just not a commercial, but a quick note. CD Foundation is about, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years old already as a Linux foundation, and but recently have gone through a bit of a relaunch, a bit of a rebranding, a bit of a revitalization with some great corporate members, but really the strength of CDF is the projects that have been donated and they're under their auspices, if you will. And we're going to talk about a really great project today. Lori, if you don't mind, you're the co-host. Why don't you kind of lay out for our folks watching what we want to talk about today?
Okay, well, as you've realized by the introductions, we are talking about Tekton today, and the Tekton is one of the CDF projects, and it is an open source framework for creating CD systems and allows developers to build, test, and deploy across cloud providers and on-prem systems. It's one of our oldest projects, and we couldn't be more happy to have the panelists here that are maintainers and also governance board members to talk a little bit about the past, present, and where they see the future of Tekton going.
Absolutely. All right, so if we're going to do the Christmas Carol thing, I guess we should start with the ghost of Tekton Past. Who feels confident enough to let's assume someone watching this out there, they don't know Tekton. They're a cybersecurity person. They haven't dealt with Tekton, right? How would you explain to them what Tekton is, how it came about, or maybe a little bit of its history? Any of our panel, feel free to just jump right in. Don't make me do it. Go ahead. Good.
I guess I can get started. I mean, going back with history, Tekton was actually born initially in the Knative ecosystem, so part of the Knative project. So Knative at the time had a component called Build, which was about taking your software and getting into a container image that you could run on Kubernetes, right? And that evolved then into a pipeline because, developers didn't want just to run a single build step, but maybe do something more sophisticated, maybe running tests before deploying your software to production. And then eventually the project moved out of the Knative ecosystem to become its own project and was renamed to Tekton. And then donated to the Continuous Delivery Foundation as one of the founding projects. If folks are familiar with Kubernetes, Kubernetes is an orchestrator for containers, and it provides resources and APIs. And what Tekton is kind of an extension of Kubernetes for doing pipelines, right? So it gives you Kubernetes resources for running pipelines on top of Kubernetes. That's in a nutshell, a short introduction. And so that was Tekton in the beginning, a single core component, Tekton pipeline. And I don't want to spoil the future past, but I think we have grown a bit since then. And I'll stop here.
All right. It's interesting we have two folks from Google on our panel today.
So obviously, there's a strong Google interest in Tekton. Lee, I wonder if maybe you want to share with us kind of how's Google fit in here?
Tekton is meant to be a platform for building CI/CD systems, so it's a bit lower level, and companies are able to kind of build CI/CD platforms on top of Tekton. So Google is definitely pretty heavily invested in Tekton's future.
So I would like to just kind of follow up with, how did you all get involved in Tekton individually? Because there's so many open source projects out there. Like, were you assigned Tekton, or what about Tekton kind of was appealing to you? Lee, you work on pipelines. Why don't you start?
Absolutely. I previously worked on a different team at Google. I was super excited just to be able to kind of work on this open source project that seemed just very useful to Google and to the ecosystem. I think there's just a lot of exciting work going on in pipelines right now, and that's kind of where I focus the majority of my time. Thinking a lot about storage and pipelines, and I'm working on our V1 release of the project. I'm also going to be kind of working a bit on workflows, which is a little bit of a higher level API for getting people set up with kind of all the parts of the Tekton ecosystem as they fit together. So including pipelines and triggering, and just nicer kind of a bit of a higher level experience. So that's what I'll be working on going forward.
Very cool. What about the rest of the panel? How did you guys get involved in Tekton?
Sure, I can go. So I have been involved with like continuous delivery CI/CD for like a few years. I did that like internally closed source stuff for a few teams at Google. And then after that, I was working on Spinnaker, which is like another like CD Foundation project that is mainly focused on continuous delivery. And then that was around like the 2018, 2019 timeframe, which is when like Tekton started popping up, and that seemed like a very exciting like new project. So I shifted to like working on that around in some point in 2019. So still in the same phase, but like Tekton is more, flexible, more focused on like, not just deployments, but the whole like CI/CD pipeline, etc. So, and it was very young, so it seemed like a very interesting, place to start.
Interesting. So, but Tekton and Spinnaker are not, mutually competitive, right? I thought there were cases where you use them both.
Oh, absolutely. So Tekton, it's more of like, as we mentioned, it's sort of like a ground up experience where we, you start with like the building blocks of CI/CD, while Spinnaker is a very well-established like project that focuses more on like, business logic you need for like continuous deployments across like VMs, across cloud providers. And it is absolutely possible to use, Tekton for your CI pipelines for all your builds, and then rely on Spinnaker to do all your deployments. So, in fact, that is actually a pretty good pattern to follow, because Spinnaker has like a lot of, best practices built in that you can utilize for continuous deployments, especially if you're doing things like, VM deployments across multi-clouds, things like that.
Absolutely. Andrea, how did you get involved in Tekton?
Right. I was, before working on OpenStack for several years, I was leading some of the QA and CI efforts in there. So I was heavily involved in the kind of testing and infrastructure side of things there. And it was a very big project, and we had a lot of teams, and we had to do like CI at scale. So it was very, very interesting, and I got to be really to like the subject. And after some time, I joined IBM, and then I was kind of looking for a new open source project to work on, as OpenStack was becoming more mature and established and needed less resources, I guess. And Tekton was getting born, and it seemed like an interesting project for IBM as well. And so it sounded like a perfect fit. So I started looking at it, and I immediately loved the community. I mean, it was really welcoming, a lot of fun to work. So I sticked around, and here I am.
Excellent. Hey, Laurie, I got to turn it around on you a little bit, if it's okay. This is our first This is our first show. A lot of people out here aren't familiar with CD Foundation, CDF. We've mentioned Tecton, obviously, and we mentioned Spinnaker, and those are both CDF projects, right? Continuous Delivery Foundation projects. But wait, there's more, right? Give our audience, share like some of the projects that are part of CDF.
Okay, you got me on the spot. We have 8 projects. So we've talked about Tecton, we've talked about Spinnaker, and I'm going through to make sure I don't miss any. So we have Jenkins, which I think everyone knows, kind of like the grandfather. It's our first graduated project. There's Screwdriver, there's Ortelius, there's Jenkins X, which is in the process of getting renamed. There's CD Events, and then we also have Shipwright. So those are the projects, and we will be bringing on a new project soon. But back to kind of, I think, what Andrea was saying, and I don't mean to like turn this around, but it was about community. And I think, everyone here on the panel is a maintainer, and then we have 2 governance board members. So can you kind of maybe share a little bit about what it's like to work with the Tecton community? And you found it really fun and interesting. I think there are a lot of people that are nervous about joining a community, whether it's the CDF in general or a specific open source project. And I think it would be great to hear like sort of what it's been like for you and what the community is like to you. Starting with whoever.
Lee, why don't you go first?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I've had really positive experiences with the Tecton community. This is my first job where I've actually been able to work with developers from other companies. And I just feel like that provides a lot of really kind of valuable experience and different perspectives. We have kind of a process for growing people from new contributors to maintainers. So kind of working my way up the contributor ladder was I think a really good learning experience. So I think that's been very positive for me.
Absolutely. It's a great way to meet people, but it's also from a career path, right? It really helps you move along. I mean, Andrea, you mentioned you were involved in was it OpenShift? Or, no, excuse me, OpenStack. And then moved, how's it been for you as part of this kind of journey?
Right. Yeah. I guess in the very beginning, starting with OpenStack, and with open source in general, you don't know what to expect because the first time you work with people from other companies, and you need to learn how to reach out to them and how to build a relationship with them, and often it's remote. Even like many years ago, a lot of open source communication, like in OpenStack case, went through IRC, and you don't get always to meet people face to face. So it's a learning experience, but it's very rewarding. So you get to build like trust relationship with other people from different countries, different places around the world, different cultures, and it's really good. It's demanding in a way because you need to learn how to communicate with different people to make sure you're inclusive in your way of speaking and relating to the others. And it's really rewarding experience for me. And when I joined Tecton, I found a very welcoming community. When you're just getting started, you need to learn, and so other contributors kind of guide you through the process, what is expected, and what's the best for you to grow within the community. Lee mentioned our contributor ladder. So you start, reading the code, getting to know the people, and then you continue making contributions, not only to the code, but also to the community in general, joining working groups, helping others, and then you continue growing in the community.
That's great. Divya, you started with Spinnaker and moved over to Tecton. Andrea was on other open source projects as well. Lee, you seem like this is maybe one of the first projects you've really kind of, been heavily involved with. How does one know when it's time to go to a different project, or is it strictly following your heart, right? And then hearts are meant to be broken, or what makes you decide, yeah, that's the project I want to jump in on?
Well, it's not a one or the other choice. Like you can something. You can still be contributing to multiple projects. It may be hard to do like both at the same level of contribution, but something Andrea mentioned was like it's not just code contributions that are important. Like a lot of like open source community is about like contributions to triaging issues, helping answer questions from users, helping other newer contributors ramp up with your knowledge that you have, which is a super rewarding part of the process of being like in the open source community. So there's so many ways to be involved in the community that I don't think it's a one or the other choice. For me personally, it just happened that way that, I was like finishing up my projects on Spinnaker, and then Tecton seemed interesting. So I moved over to that full time. I was still involved with Spinnaker for like a little bit after that, like helping, answer questions and all that, but that's just sort of how it worked. But in general, like we're trying to strive to make like Tecton open to everyone, not just like people who are just full-time working on Tecton, but so we try to make it easy to all of our working group meetings are public, they're recorded. We try to strive to do all of our discussions out in like open source, so people can chime in across different time zones, like across different countries. So we try to make it as inclusive as we can, so like people, even if you have like only a little bit of time to contribute, you can still get involved.
So I think there's I think there's something that you guys all touched on that I think is very interesting and awesome, and it's right in line with the CDF, and it's this ability to work across different organizations, right? We're a vendor neutral foundation, and we believe in community, and the way to really advance this technology in general is if we all have this open source framework to work towards. And one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about is supply chain security, because that is something that is affecting everyone. There's been a 650% increase in supply chain security attacks in 2021. That was in the State of DevOps report, I believe. And I was just kind of wondering, so Tecton has a tool called Chains. And what are your thoughts on supply chain security, and how is Tecton working to help kind of bring that awareness to people that use the tool? And how are y'all trying to make things safer for developers?
Sure, I can get us started on this one. So for supply chain security, I mean, obviously that's like the big buzzword these days. You can hear about SolarWinds and all the other attacks. So and Chains is like, you can see like there's been a lot of work ongoing in Chains. So yeah, it's super critical that Tecton is secure by default, and we provide a way to ensure people can have like a secure build pipe, not just a build pipeline, the entire supply chain is secure with Tecton at its core. So we have been collaborating pretty closely with others in this community. There's been a lot of ongoing work, not just in Chains, but also in pipelines to do it. So one example is the Sigstore folks are pretty heavy. The Sigstore community is pretty heavily involved with Chains and to make sure it works well. We are also working to include things like Spiffy and Spire support in Tecton pipelines, so we can make guarantees about identity and authentication. So there's definitely we have an S3C working group where we have a list of topics that we want to go through. So there's a lot of ongoing work in this area, which is super exciting.
And Lee, your baby's pipeline. So do you want to expand on that?
I actually have not been very involved with the supply chain security work, so I think DPO gave a great overview, and I don't know that I have anything to add there. Sorry.
It's okay. You don't feel obligated. It's okay. Andrea, have you been exposed to Chains and what's going on here with software supply chain?
Yeah, I think, DPO gave a great introduction to what we're doing. And I think there are two aspects. One is we want to provide features for Tecton users to be able to make their supply chain or their builds secure so that they can build they can create pipelines that are secure. But and that's one aspect. The other aspect is the build system itself, which is Tekton, needs to be secure. So there are kind of two directions that we are working on, and one is making Tekton secure, and things that we've done there. I mean, we have done like a security audit with a third party. This was sponsored by the Continuous Delivery Foundation, and I think it was a very good learning experience for us. I mean, it went, I would say, well, in the sense that we didn't find many issues, and the few ones that were found, we addressed them, the most critical ones. So we have a report published recently with the Continuous Delivery Foundation blog about this. And also we introduced some more testing to make sure that we continuously verify that. We are working, as Dibia said, with Sigstore. So we have we use chains for building Tekton itself. So we use Tekton to build Tekton as chains along with it. And so what chains provide there is basically the ability to sign our container images. So Tekton is distributed in the form of container images, and those container images are signed by Sigstore through chains. So now I'm going around in words. I'm an engineer. I would like to have a diagram and show arrows and things, but
well, we'll work on it for the next episode. But you know what I find fascinating, guys? So I come from the cyber world. I've been in security. It wasn't called cyber, it was security. But I've been in security 25 years. It does, at some level, it does my heart good to hear how security is becoming very important in a project such as Tekton, right? Because security is becoming important in everything we're doing, and it has to be going forward. Unfortunately, I also know from my experience in the world of tech that it wasn't always the case, right? When Tekton maybe was originally kind of envisioned and started, catching on, security may not have been a paramount, right? The most important, or one of the top 3 important things. So my question then to all 3 of you, and to Laurie as well, feel free, is, okay, so today security is important. What's important tomorrow, right? What else are we, right? As we look at the future of Tekton, where do you think we need to be making some bets? Where do you think we need to, kind of dive in? And feel free, anybody jump in and we can go from there. You must have some thoughts. Andrea, you're shy, but I'm going to pull it out of you. What do you think?
Right. The future of Tekton. Well, I think today Tekton is especially successful in larger companies, enterprise, or companies at least that they have a platform team, because it's basically your Legos for building your CI/CD system, right? So it's very powerful, very flexible, but it requires some engineering on top, to make it usable. And so one of the things, one of the project that was mentioned already, I think by Lee, is workflows, and that's one interesting project that kind of gives you more an abstraction on top, or a layer on top that brings a lot of pieces of Tekton together and gives you a bit more opinionated view. And so the idea is that if you're a small project and you want to run CI system and you want to start using Tekton, you shouldn't have spent months building your CI system. You should just take Tekton and start using it. And so that's an interesting direction for the future. I guess something that we've been already looking at, but that's, I think, continues to be very interesting for the future and very important for the future, is interoperability. So, Tekton is not an isle in the world. So, a lot of people uses Tekton and other tools. It uses Spinnaker and it uses Jenkins. And if you're in your organization, you use a combination of tools, and then you need to know what's going on with the different tools. So I think it's important for them to be interoperable, to have some common way of presenting what they're doing, to have some way to communicate with each other if you want to start something on Tekton side and hand off to Spinnaker. So I think interoperability is very important, and I know it's something that it's at the heart of CDF as well, in the heart of CDF as well. So I see that as a very important topic for the future. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Panel members, anything to add or?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Divya.
Okay. Sure. So I was just going to call out interoperability too as like a big thing, not just across the CDF thing, but like, one of Tekton's goal has been to have like a reusable sort of like things that you like, best practices in a catalog that can be reused across, your pipelines, etc. So, we just started working with like Artifact Hub to like have like one single hub where you can like have all your like tasks and pipelines, like maybe all your secure tasks and trusted tasks and pipelines in one place, so you can just like get it from there. And so that's one big thing. Fitting into like other CD projects is obviously another big one. And the supply chain security work is, we are only like at the very beginning legs of that. So like there is quite a bit to go there in terms of like how do we make like not just Tekton, but like interoperability with everything secure. So yeah.
Excellent. Lee?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just gonna agree with what Andrea said about kind of making it easier for people to put the Tekton building blocks together. So we've done a really great job so far of making the project really flexible and kind of allowing people to express really a whole bunch of different pipelines and workflows. And I think we just want to make it easier for the large number of times where people kind of want to do some very common workflows, making it easier to kind of get set up to a repo with some triggers, some just easier configuration for events, and connecting that to pipelines in an easier way. So, I think for me, kind of workflows will be the at least the future of my work on Tekton in the medium term. Yeah.
Interesting. Lori, I'm wondering, do you have other topics you want to touch on?
I think the only thing I kind of wanted to just ask the panel is, if I am looking to get involved in a project, what part of Tekton are you guys looking for contributors, or how do you get started? Like if workflows is something that's very interesting to me, like how do you get started with Tekton? I think is kind of what I was wondering. Like this is your product pitch, this is your opportunity to really like try and get the community a little bit more engaged, where maybe you need some holes filled. So what would y'all be looking for?
Well, I mean, we have many communication channel and I would say jump on our Slack. We have a Slack, and if you go to Tekton CD community/community, then you find how to join our Slack and how to find, to get on the different channels. If synchronous communication is not for you, I mean, we have other options. We have distribution lists also in the community repo. You can find them, or just go on GitHub. We have issues there. You can create issues you can discuss on the issues. But don't be shy. I mean, if we have working groups that you can join. So we have a public calendar. Again, in the community repo, you can find all the details for how to reach out to us. But don't be afraid. We are a friendly bunch, and so and there are really. No, we don't bite. And there are so many areas where we can get contributions. I mean, and many different languages. I mean, Tekton, a lot of Tekton is written in Go, but we also have like a dashboard where you can use, like JavaScript. We have small bits here and there in Python as well. We really welcome like editors for always getting our documentation better or writing new tutorials. People helping out, running the working groups, answering our users and tectons. So there is a lot of different kind of work that can be done. And so you can start from really tiny things, get to know the people, and then grow there.
Excellent. I love it. Lee W., I think, Lori, I want to paraphrase what your question was, which is, hey, for people watching out here who are saying, I'd like to get involved, all right, you know what, I may want to get involved. What's the best advice you can give them, right? How do you get started? I mean, Lee, you mentioned it earlier, right? You work your way up. But I'm talking for someone who doesn't even have their foot in the door yet. What do you do? What do they do?
Yeah, I would say just get started by using Tecton and figuring out like what are the parts that are confusing, what are the parts that could use some improvement. Reaching out to us on our Slack channels, filing issues, helping with improving our docs or writing tutorials. Those are all like really great places for new contributors to get started. I'll add as well, I think the CLI team is looking for contributions. So that's another great place for new contributors.
I'll tell you, if Tecton's like any of the other open source projects I've been involved in over a really long time, there is no lack of things that need another hand, right? There's always work to be done because even in a sponsored organization like the CDF and the Linux Foundation, it relies on volunteers. And so there's no one, I'm talking to people watching this out there now. Yet these three folks you see here, it's nothing particularly special about them. They're great people. But you know what is special about them? They made a commitment to volunteer and help. And, it's not necessarily for personal glory. It's certainly not for the money. But even Lori doing this on the board there, these are volunteers, and these organizations run on volunteers. So if you have some time to spare, or you find this really kind of, Tecton and the whole CDF, or the whole, CI/CD thing fascinating, get involved. It's a great way to meet people as well. Speaking of meeting people and getting involved, you're watching this, it's October 11th. Later this month, Kubecon and CDFCon is being held up in Detroit. And along with that, I believe is a CDF event, Lori? Or CDF will be there?
Yes. So on October 25th, we have the CD Summit. So we're really excited about that. I believe the agenda is about to be released, or well, if it's October 11th, it's already out there. So that's great. Yep. So if you go to the Kubecon website and then you check co-located events and you scroll down, you'll see the Continuous Delivery Summit, where we'll have an entire day full of sessions. I will be co-hosting with the GM Fatih. So that'll be cool. We're going to be announcing a new project. It's going through the process right now, so we're really excited about that. In addition, we'll have project maintainers. There's going to be a maintainer panel, which is really cool. And it's a good opportunity to be able to kind of work with the people on the low level that are doing the projects. I'm not sure if anyone here will be there in addition to me, but I think it's a great opportunity to learn more about what continuous delivery is, how it impacts your business, how it impacts the community, as well as just like we're talking today, the past, present, and the future. Like what started as a tool to help people deliver fast is now transitioning into all of these amazing things with workflows and delivering fast and delivering securely and making sure that there's interoperability and that there's events and that you can work with other tools. So I think, Tecton is a great example of how one project can work with multiple projects that are not only within the CDF, but within other organizations like Sigstore, which is an open SSF. And so again, I think this idea of community and working together is what the CDF is all about, cross collaboration, regardless of the company that you work for, collaboration on multiple levels, to your point, whether it's helping update docs, creating demos, or just using the tool and creating issues and seeing what's working and what's not working. I think everybody on the panel today has a great experience with Tekton and open source and have good stories to tell. So if you're not a part of their Slack channel yet, I think you should become a part of it and maybe ask them questions so that you can kind of get their insider view of what it's like to work on an open source project.
Let me ask a stupid question. How does one join the Slack channel for Tekton? Where do they go? Anybody? I see they're all looking right now. Go ahead.
No, there is a... Oh, go ahead, Dibio.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you go to Tekton CD/community, we have links to join our Slack, our shared calendar, all our working groups, basically everything you need, our mailing list, basically everything you need to get involved.
That's what we're looking for. Okay, thank you, Divya. Hey, we're about out of time on our first show. I will be at Kubecon, CDCon, and everything as well. We'll be doing, actually, we're broadcasting live from Detroit later this month. So if you're there, come by and join. Come by, say hello. And then next month, we'll be back with another show highlighting another project in the CDF. I'm looking forward to it. I want to thank all three of our panel members. You know, look, this is not what you signed up for when you, right? Who signs up to be a maintainer or a board member of an open source project? Oh, and by the way, you got to do some video. You know, so I want to thank you all for coming in here and putting yourselves out there with it. Lori, I wanted to leave you with the last word, if you could bring it home.
Thank you. I think if you are looking forward to, or looking to learn more about the CDF in general, if you go to cd.foundation, you can find out about all of the projects that we have. And to everyone's point, there are mailing lists, calendars, listservs that you can be a part of. Go talk to your company. You might be a member already of the Linux Foundation or CDF and see what's out there. We have trainings, we have tools. And as you've seen today, we have an awesome community of contributors, maintainers, governance members that are here, and they want to help you get involved in open source.
You bet. All right, everyone. Thank you. Hopefully we'll see you in Detroit. If not, we'll see you on the next CD pipeline. This is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong, Lori LaRusso for the CDF. Have a great day.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. Cody J. Brown here with some upcoming programs from Techstrong Learning. So tomorrow, Wednesday, October 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern, SciCode is joining us on Security Boulevard to discuss modern dependency challenges and the evolution of software dependency security. Register today for Next Gen Software Composition Analysis, Securing Modern SDLCs with Pipeline Composition Analysis. The following morning, Wednesday, October 13th at 11 a.m. Eastern, Plutora brings you Accelerating Continuous Security with Value Stream Management. Our speakers will revisit the profound requirement for continuous security and go over practical examples of continuous security dashboards. And immediately following at 1 p.m. Eastern, the folks at Fairwinds are taking us through an overview of AWS Carpenter. They will discuss the pros and cons and highlight some key missteps that can run costs sky high. To join us for AWS Carpenter Readiness, are your apps ready to move? So that is all I've got for you right now. But as always, we have plenty of upcoming and on-demand programs for you here at Techstrong Learning, so stay tuned.
Previously on Engineering the Change.
It's kind of like being on a football team. You got to make cuts to the roster, right? But we got to take it down to 3 finalists. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
So,
she's in.
Yep. But there was, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this. I give extra bonus points to people who can write well and can express themselves, and Donald did express himself. All right, so let's go through this then. Stephanie Sanchez, Donald Bazil, and Carly Duvel are our 3 finalists for this cohort's Engineering the Change Scholarship.
Engineering the Change has literally changed the lives of scholarship winners. Here are our past recipients.
My name is Victoria Roas. I am an immigrant from Brazil. I came to this country when I was 10 years old.
My name is Drew Johnson. I'm a full-stack software engineer.
My name is Alina Maluk. I'm from Ukraine. I'm the winner of scholarship from 2 cohorts before me.
The Engineering of Change scholarship that I won last year was life-changing.
I really poured my soul and told my story to them, and a few weeks later I got a call from Alan, and it was, I even cried on the phone, I think. And it was like a life-changing moment.
The program at Boca Code was amazing. It was easy for me with zero experience to learn the fundamentals of software development.
My career has completely changed from barely being able to, hold down a job to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Boca Code has built me up.
I got a job at hot fintech software company at the day of graduation.
I think that becoming a software engineer has been one of the most rewarding things in my life.
I am Carly Duberval, mother of 2 amazing children. I have a bachelor degree in accounting.
My name is Donald Brazil. I was born in Haiti. I was raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Growing up, I've always been interested in technology.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm originally from Haiti. I've resided in Miami for wherever it feels. I currently have a degree in psychology, and I enjoy helping people.
I migrated recently to Florida because of insecurity and political issue.
I fell into software engineering as something I would love to pursue.
I feel like there is a void that I still have. There's something tugging at me because I feel like I have not challenged myself to reach my full potential.
Here in US, my degree is not accepted. I need to work for my family duties.
Winning this scholarship is a great opportunity for me to finally, pursue that career in software engineering. And, I would love to, give back to those who were in my position where they were completely lost and didn't really have any guidance.
My goal is to be a vessel to other people, other underrepresented communities.
Without money and resources, I can't afford to go to Boca Code.
And being a finalist is an amazing opportunity. I would never have thought I would have been even considered.
This field, I will be good at it. And I have an opportunity to make an impact on my community and the world.
If I won this scholarship, I will share my knowledge with other Black women, immigrants who share my faith.
I would love to, have the opportunity at the end of the day to showcase those who believe in me, and then, help others who also, would be in the same position that I am.
Because I know my contribution will make a lifelong impact on the world.
thanks so much for joining us here for this interview today. And you know what? Making it to the finals for this is an accomplishment in and of itself. And I think it really talks about the kind of person you are. And, you know, reading your essay, I was very, very impressed. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I will be that software engineer who will help immigrants to achieve their dreams. 5
years, I would love to see myself, you know, slowly opening my organization, have it on the ground, you know, running. I just want to see myself helping others, just like others help me. I just want to give back to those who gave to me.
I see myself hopefully excelling in the field of software engineering, and I don't know exactly what my niche will be. So I know that I'm going to be excelling. I don't know exactly what it'll look like right now, but you guys will be proud.
Why do you want to be a software engineer? What's gonna make you stick through this at the end of the day?
I love it. I can do it. I will do it. Why I will do it? Because I love it.
It's just a great field to get into. The technology portion of it is just something I've always been interested in. As a kid, you know, I've always been interested in computers, phones, gadgets.
I always felt a need to, or a pull toward doing something for someone else. In the field of engineering, allows me to continue to do that, because whether it is in a medical field, the automotive field, just the world of entrepreneurship, there's just so many different ways that I can continue doing good and making an impact.
One of the things that's something that's very near and dear to my heart is, you know, equity, parity, gender diversity, and just diversity and parity on all levels, equality. And I wonder how do you envision going about doing that?
Like I did with my old career, I lift women to accounting in my country. I motivate them, I assist them, and help them to achieve, like I said, to achieve their dream, to be excellent in this field.
I would love to open an organization that can, you know, give back to those and help guide them with the, you know, the opportunities that, you know, I'd had from this experience.
What drives you to do software engineering and not, you know, go back to something that you've already known and you've obviously been very successful at?
I would say now everything is technology. So why should I say in accounting? If the world is moving and everything now is tech. I have two brothers. One died in 2007. He was a senior software engineer. My youngest brother is a software engineer. Why not me? It's because I'm woman? No. I want it, I will do it.
At the moment right now, I work inventory for a home installation company. It's a pretty okay job, but it's not what I feel that I was meant to do.
The knowledge I have, I can pass on to other people. I know some of the challenges that our communities face. So with my knowledge and my mentorship, whether it's mentoring one person or just a group of people, exposing them to this field and to just other fields that exist where there's more to life than just what is in front of us. And I believe that I can be a bridge in that gap.
How do you feel like the scholarship is gonna do to you? Like, why is it important for you to win this?
I will share my knowledge with people, with women or immigrants, and use my knowledge to help them.
This scholarship is giving me that opportunity to show the world that, you know, I can do great things.
So this scholarship would definitely assist me in changing the trajectory of my life, and hopefully where I can continue this same legacy in helping other people as well.
You know, your essay was amazing. Your answers here today were amazing. You really do represent what engineering the change is all about. Thanks for coming in today, and we can't wait to announce our winners soon.
Hi, it's Mike Rothman. Again, we're here for the Techstrong Research Review. I am GM of Techstrong Research, Chief Strategy Officer of Techstrong Group. Since I keep forgetting to introduce myself at the beginning of each of our reviews. So now that we've got those formalities out of the way, let me also introduce my partner in crime, Mitch Ashley. Mitch, first of all, who are you? And then second of all, how you doing this morning, bud?
I'm doing really good. Hey, man, always good to talk with you. Love working with you. Yeah, I'm both principal analyst working with you, Mike, and also CTO with Techstrong Group. So kind of have a hand in that camp and hand in that cap. So
yeah, you got a hand in all sorts of different stuff. So we try to keep you focused on, in terms of the research stuff where you can have the biggest impact. And today, we've kind of usually started off with a news peg and, doing this. And, we were just chatting and honestly, it's been a really busy week for me as well as for Mitch. So, we kind of were just chatting about, what the different topics are. What do we really want to talk about? And we kind of got around to this concept of a platform. Right. And there are a couple of different acquisitions that Mitch, you can talk about, a conversation you had with, a company that we do some work with. We can kind of hit those as examples. But, the whole platform thing has been, the goal. I mean, really, since we kind of started, right? I mean, back when we were doing mainframes, right? The big iron was the platform, and Amdahl came out and they wanted to be, a competing platform. And you had mini computers and they wanted to have their own platforms. And really what it is, it's about control, right? It's about, kind of having all of the pieces of the puzzle so that you kind of have the customers as captive audiences so they don't have to go elsewhere. And then because you have that set of customers that you're bringing forward, you build an ecosystem, right? And the ecosystem around your environments, leveraging, interfaces that you publish, partners that you have to qualify. And in a lot of cases, they pay, right, for the privilege of being your partner. And that's where you start to accrete the benefits of the platform, right? Windows was, kind of maybe the most popular platform that we've seen, kind of in our world. But, they're in our kind of spheres of influence, right? DevOps, security, cloud native infrastructure. There are lots of different examples of, kind of companies that have, striven or strove, I guess, strove would be the word.
I'm with you.
You're following me? To be that platform player. And right now, I think ostensibly nobody would really argue with, Palo Alto Networks really having positioned themselves as, kind of a security platform. You have CrowdStrike coming at it from the endpoint side of things is, again, another platform. Back in the day, it was McAfee and McAfee's partner program. And originally it was Checkpoint, right? And Checkpoint's OPSEC that really had these partner programs driving, kind of these partnerships that really established the company as platforms. And I guess the question that we got to, and you can use examples of DevOps as well, but the questions we got to is, does everything have to be a platform now? Right? Or is there room for companies to do niche type stuff, or are they all just sitting there waiting to, be acquired by the platform player? And it's kind of like a big game of musical chairs where if you're not, kind of aligned with one of these platforms and ultimately, kind of one of their acquired properties, right? Are you sitting there, kind of standing up when the music stops? And that was a lot of words, Mitch. I mean, what do you think about, some of those concepts I threw out there in nonstop rambling format?
That's pretty good. I'm not sure if you took a breath or not, but that was pretty awesome. I'm kidding you. It's kind of like we've we used to think about things of product suites, right? Excel and Word and PowerPoint and whatever, and that, whatever it was, security products or whatever. But I think the thing that really changed the mindset, and yes, there have been platform companies before today, of course, but I remember first working with AWS, and this is 2008 kind of time frame, fairly early, pretty crude actually. Their interface was either command line. We had set up your keys or used a browser plugin for, I don't remember the name of it, for Firefox only thing I worked on. Anyway, point being is that really ushered in the era for the cloud of the portal. And that's the place where you do everything and you get everything. Right? The marketplace is there. The services from that company is there. The things I do with their services are all there. And that's kind of this same platform strategy that a lot of folks, because they're in the cloud already, they have an interface, a UI for you to, log on and use their stuff. Or sometimes, it is on-prem and not in the cloud yet, or it's both. But that sort of pushes you to do that. But I think it's also that you can solve any one individual problem, observability, tracing, or API gateways, or pick your preference of specialty. And there definitely is an opportunity to specialize. But I think there's a real tendency to diversify or to couple with that complementary products and services. And I know I'm doing my ramble bit here. I know from my own experience, that's a double-edged sword, because it can make you very attractive, but it can also limit you who's going to acquire you, because company A is looking at acquiring you, but they have 3 of your 4 things already. They don't value that. They just want the 4th. And maybe you sell it for the 4th, but you kind of like, I got all this other stuff. What do I do with that too? So we can't all be on everybody's platform.
No, everything can't be. I think that's the answer, right? Everything can't be a platform. So I think, and really what it is, it's incumbent upon customers, right? And this is kind of a wacky thing, right? That customers end up having to figure out which of these aspects are they doing, what is their tool chain going to look like, how are they going to integrate all of these pieces together? I think the larger the enterprise, the more capability they have to, really mix and match and do a true best of breed, right? Whatever that means, concept in terms of the capabilities and the technologies that they bring, to the table, where smaller companies, I think, do have to, look for more prepackaged integration. And that's, again, in the world of security, right? That's where, when you get to mid-market, Rapid7 has a very interesting approach, because it's all cloud-based and, all very integrated, starting obviously with vulnerability management. That's where they came from. But, SIEM, security analytics, they've got automation, they've got application security, they've got cloud security, right? All under the auspices of one platform. And they have services. So, MDR or managed detection and response, and pen testing and incident response, and a lot of these things under one umbrella, right? So it makes the customer's job easier. And I think the lower, end, or the less sophisticated customer, the more apt they are to really kind of buy hook, line, and sinker into, a specific, kind of company's approach. Right. So I'm doing an assessment, right now, doing some cloud security work for a company. They've kind of bought into everything from AWS, right? So their platform in AWS, they use all AWS security stuff. They just got that, and they don't use third-party capabilities yet, right? So what I'm in there doing is trying to help them understand how to mature their process, help them understand both from a process and a tooling standpoint, what it is that they need to look at. And the reality is they do have to start looking at some external tools, because the platform is going to give you a certain amount of stuff, but nobody's going to sit there and say AWS is best of breed in terms of a lot of these security things. And you can look at a variety of different, I think, DevOps tools, right? Where, they've got tools that are there, but they aren't necessarily going to be, top in each one of their specific disciplines. Again, for a certain class of customer, that's fine, right? But, kind of as you get more sophisticated, I think you're going to want more robust capabilities in a lot of these different areas.
Well, I think, one of the things about cloud is that also has its own lock-in, right? You're so tied into Azure, Amazon, Google, whatever services, that makes it hard to say, okay, let's add a second or move to another. So if I kind of turn the coin to the other side and look at it from the software perspective, well, developers are a very independent bunch. And they don't like you to say, oh, we bought everything from this company, so here you go. Here's all your stuff. And maybe not everybody is going to turn that down, but they want some flexibility. They do like best of breed, but then you have to watch out you don't get yourself into the tool integration business. But there is, I think, a crossover point in the enterprise market where we have too many vendors. We can't afford to spend all that money with everybody. Let's try to pull our number of vendors to reduce that. And that might be where, a GitLab kind of approach, where it is sort of the full life cycle of development to deployment. You could pick others, that take that kind of approach or moving in that direction. So it's kind of both. It just depends on the philosophy of the organization and how much the purchasing department has control over, whether we're going to add another vendor or not, at least part of it. But it's an interesting dynamic because one platform company buys another platform company, which platform wins? How do you make that part of the same one? And that's always
and how do you help customers migrate to whatever the new thing is, right? And that tends to be where it gets both very complicated and fraught with peril, right? Because in some cases they don't make a choice, and then you just kind of end up with a couple of different Walking Dead platforms that it's not clear where the investment is, and they haven't made the decision. So those are things when you do get some of these big acquisitions, and it's not clear or a little bit nebulous in terms of what the product strategy is. Be very wary, right? Because that usually doesn't end well. It's very difficult for organizations to, migrate that, right? And then to not have clear communication from the companies becomes, very challenging. But unfortunately, it's hard, right? Because, you've got a certain centralization of folks that are on one platform. You've got other folks on another platform. Who do you tell is wrong, right? And how are you going to get them there without, opening up the whole environment to a competitor coming in? And
if you're going to force me to change, it's a good opportunity.
That's right. I mean, if you're going to force me to change, I'm going to take a look at everything, right? And making sure that you kind of keep those folks, in the family becomes a challenge, right? So this is, and this gets to be higher level, kind of vendor and product strategy stuff that I find, specific. Very compelling and interesting, and it's a lot of the work that I've done over the
specialty of yours.
It is, and but the reality is, at the end of the day, customers don't care. What they want is, I need something to solve this specific problem. I want to do it in what I hope to be a strategic way, but I've been doing this too long, and not me specifically, right? But most customers have been doing this too long to really have trust that, it's all going to work out great, and they're going to do exactly what they say, and they're going to execute flawlessly, because that just hasn't been their experience. That hasn't been my experience. I don't think that's been anybody's experience. I mean, integrating these platforms at a, high level, while the car is speeding down the mountain, tends to be, again, a very difficult function. So what do customers do, right? They really have to focus on the problem that they're trying to solve. And they have to understand that flexibility is critical. And a lot of what you just said, Mitch, right? APIs and microservices and modern architecture and DevOps, pipelines gives you much greater ability to swap out a lot of these tools, right? If you're in a big monolithic environment, if you built a set of applications on top of, or in AWS using predominantly serverless infrastructure, right? How do you move that? How do you move that, right? I mean, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, if you're building everything within Lambda. So understand that that's a decision as well, right? That platforming decision becomes an irrevocable type of situation. So you need to go into both sides with your eyes open.
It's interesting because if you're using services in a cloud, you obviously don't have the effort of, okay, I've got to go figure out what hardware I'm going to put it on and set all that up, and then I can figure out for how I'm going to use it. You're going to start right there. So there's, I think, a natural advantage of being in the cloud makes it easier to maybe move, because now I skip that step. still it's not easy. But there's also what you were talking about is more and more we think of our environment as a declarative environment. In other words, it's built by scripts. It's done by Terraform. It's done by scripts that are in Git. And I can build an environment with the push of a button or executing a pull command from Git and running some code. And in theory, it's maybe easier to swap out some technology, like, okay, I want to change this solution I'm using for IAM or for DR or whatever it might be. You could script that and test it and do all of that and not have to go through the whole brain dead part of it of figuring out how I'm going to set all this up. Now, I don't know that all our environments are that neat and clean. If they're that, really
well, they're not, because you're using native services in some way, shape, or form, right? Because the overhead in really building application environments that are truly portable, in a lot of cases, is not worth it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting, just the differences that a cloud platform vendor takes. So here's an example. In the certificate market, certificate authority, AWS's view was on, hey, that's no big deal, right? We'll issue certificates to whoever, whatever, kind of the identity of proving who you are. You're a customer. That's good enough for us. Go set up here's the CA service. You can generate certificates to your heart desire, because they're thinking about it from a software perspective, but also end user. Whereas, pick any of the traditional CAs, in whatever form they are these days, that's a very different, who you are, and validating that and looking up your, Standard & Poor's code or whatever they do, is a different approach. And it's kind of a threat to that market. Not that it's, taking it away from them, but they're software people. They're thinking about it as a much different kind of service than a security company would think of it. So that's right. Interesting.
That's right.
That one of the things that sparked our conversation too was ServiceNow acquiring Era Software, which apparently they're going to make part of the Lightstep.
That's right.
Business unit or product organization, which we work with them also. As a matter of fact, I do a show with them called the SRE Show. So check that out with Austin Parker and his team. Anyway, so ServiceNow is a workflow automation management company. It's kind of like Jira going from tickets into workflow, right? And now ServiceNow has moved into other spaces with observability. And I think if I remember right, the Era Software, it was a little more cloud native focused.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, it's kind of confusing in a way. Like, are the workflow people going to buy observability software, or is it just make that single vendor?
No, I mean, well, think about it this way, right? And I think, kind of it being affiliated and the plan being to fold it into Lightstep is pretty illustrative of what their plan is, right? And that's, again, if Lightstep is really focusing on, SRE or platform engineering, right? Kind of getting and being able to analyze telemetry as part of your, platform management and platform, instrumentation capability, you got to have the ability to do analytics on top of that. So I think it's more a matter of understanding that they're trying to build solutions for a specific constituent within that business group. Right now, how does that impact, and how does Lightstep fit into, a huge, kind of work management tool like ServiceNow? That's a different discussion, right? But, kind of looking as if Lightstep were doing this as a standalone company, we wouldn't bat an eyelash at it, right? It would just be like,
don't get distracted by the wrong things, right?
Right.
That makes sense.
So it's like, it makes sense given, kind of the kind of target that they're looking at. But, and again, ServiceNow building that, and they've made a number of acquisitions on the security side too, trying to get in that threat intel and trying to, kind of build into, more automation, which is really, kind of something that would lend itself to what it is that they do. But do they sell to the same folks? Right. And that's kind of where you start to, kind of see where there are some limitations to this Uber platform concept, and that, if you have to start traversing along buying dynamics, that's a different buying motion, right? That's a CIO type, CTO type of buying motion. And does ServiceNow have that relationship? They do, right? Are they gonna, but when it gets pushed down to those functional leaders, does that type of company become credible? And, that's really the question. I can tell you in security, it hasn't been as successful as, are they selling a bunch of stuff? You bet, right? They're a huge company. But are they perceived to be one of the big players in, kind of automating or instrumenting, kind of security motions? Not really. Right. Can they get there? I don't know. Right. Depends how much money they want to spend to establish themselves, in that space. So, again, even platform companies have to pick their places, right? They have to pick their constituencies. They have to build solutions specifically to make those folks' jobs easier. Because honestly, unless you're pretty much Microsoft, nobody else has the breadth of, kind of solutions that they do to really kind of traverse and transcend a lot of these organizational boundaries. And again, to Microsoft's credit, they've done a great job of managing, that process.
Yeah, and their transition to cloud services has been pretty astonishing, frankly.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a big lift, I tell you. And you can have your woes or your pros with Microsoft, but it's pretty impressive what they've done.
No. I mean, how they've transitioned the business, and really, what's interesting is how they've avoided becoming the villain again, right? Back in the day when they were mowing over, tool companies and folding everything into Windows platform and then antitrust, and they were the villain. I mean, there was no question about that. Kind of they were the company that folks, didn't really like, and they had folks that weren't necessarily lovable, running the company, whether it was Bill Gates or Ballmer. I mean, obviously, you have tremendous respect for what those folks did, but nobody said, "Oh, I love these guys."
It's a different philosophy. It's we own Windows, and if you want anything to do with
that's
us,
right. Yeah, that's right. Here's the toll booth, right? And you're going to pay. Whereas what Satya has been able to do there is really kind of just stay out of the wars, right? Let Europe go after Google, right? Let all the retailers and everybody else go after AWS, and we'll just stand out here on the side going, we're up here, guys. We have Azure, right? We have Office or Microsoft 365. We have, all these security solutions. We have, DevOps tooling that we're starting to build in. We're folding all these companies, into our platform, but they're not being, kind of douchey about it. Mm-hmm. And that, again, that's a huge cultural change for Microsoft. And Satya's been in place for 7-8 years at this point. So, it's not necessarily new. But if you compare them to the Microsoft of 20 years ago, it certainly is. And again, I think it's appreciated when you talk to customers. Yeah, Microsoft is nickel and diming them, and they don't love, kind of they constantly, I got to buy 50 solutions, but, then they'll package it up as an E5 or an M5 or whatever, the package is that gives you all the stuff that you pretty much need, and they make it very easy and financially, attractive to do more with them. And that's the power of the platform, right?
They're still not fun to deal with when it comes to licensing and their programs. It is, they have to hire third-party specialists, to help you figure out what to buy in that track.
Of course. And that's, any big platform has always had, kind of the cost management folks coming in, in order to help get your arms around that stuff. That's been a truism. But again, the reality is anytime you're spending 10 to hundreds of millions of dollars with a company, you're going to want somebody taking a look at that, right? Just from a diligence standpoint.
I always thought of it as IT doing our taxes when it came to renewing our Microsoft license.
No, that's exactly right. And what are you doing? And it's really tricky because everything is usage based now. I think that, kind of adds another level of complexity, which is what am I? It was pretty, kind of discreet before. It's like, am I using the tool? Am I not using the tool? If I'm not using the tool, do I have to pay the maintenance? Right now that everything is a subscription and everything is the cloud, a lot of things are usage based. You really have to get a sense of how much of this am I using? Can I get to another volume tier? What's the impact going to be? So it's a far more complicated type of environment, and you get such more granularity or such additional granularity over what it is that you're doing from an activity standpoint. Again, getting on top of that is brutal, right? I hardly do anything my AWS account, right? Just more lab stuff, and I play around, now and again, and I'll teach every so often out of those accounts. And the reality is, right, getting on top of that, what we're spending. I mean, I get a 30-page bill, and I'm not even doing anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, don't leave those servers running until the next class, right?
Oh, I did that. Yeah. I did that one with Microsoft. And my problem was I couldn't remember what account I was using. So I got this bill and I'm like, what the hell is this bill for? And I'm like running through all the accounts I use, and there were not a few of them. That gave me heartburn. I burned up a bunch of time, trying to find that out.
What would be interesting is we could go so many places with this conversation, but it'd be interesting to see, we've talked a lot about sort of software and security integrating, overlapping, merging, but they also kind of have their own disciplines too. And DevOps in the center of that, DevOps is the tools. No, it's how you create software, but there are tools that help you automate through a DevOps process. And that, that's evolving. By the way, there's a great debate going on. Someone wrote an article that DevOps is dead. And I'm like, okay, there's some clickbait articles.
Yeah. I mean, that's
isn't dead.
That's asinine, but
that's dumb.
But to again pimp out some of our stuff. I mean, kind of understanding a lot of those interactions and overlaps. That's a lot of what we're going to be doing at Predict. Right. So we're going to be both doing research in each of our different coverage areas, and we're really going to come forward with a vision of how a lot of these pieces fit together. That's going to drive a lot of what we do at Techstrong Group in 2023. So very excited about that. I'm going to be, kind of traversing along the, a couple of nice areas in Europe over the next couple of days. And it's going to give me some time to think, right, as I'm hiking between different places and, kind of enjoying the scenery. But, and again, Mike, you're one dimensional. I get it, right? But I will be thinking a little bit about how a lot of these pieces, kind of come together, because now's the time, right? We're in Q4, folks. We got to really start thinking about, kind of what 23 looks like. So this idea of selecting your platforms strategically, understanding how a lot of these pieces fit together, but ultimately making sure that you, as the customer, as the consumer of these services, is making those decisions, right? That you are in charge of your infrastructure, how you're going to fit this together, what your tool chain looks like, and how you're going to, really support the emerging requirements of, kind of your business users and consumers within the environment. I mean, that's what we have to be focusing on as we start looking towards 2023.
By the way, so we're talking about Predict 2023. It's scheduled for January 12th. Mark it on your calendars. I know it's a few months out there, but it'll be here quick. And the theme that's emerging is kind of stand and deliver. It's like, yes, you had to deal with stuff in the pandemic, and yes, we accelerated to move to the cloud, and yes, we did these digital transformation projects, and we did move to DevOps, and yes. Now you got to make it happen. We are counting on you to deliver software. We're counting on you to be secure in the cloud or in mobile or in whatever environment we're in, our customers in. And so it's, we have to execute. When financial conditions get tough, it's about performance, right? I mean, that narrows you in, laser light on how we doing. Let's get results.
For sure. So great. It's good. This, again, fantastic conversation, a little bit off the cuff. And I think that's when we do tend to do our best work is really just, kind of brainstorming, pulling on threads and really seeing where we go, coming to some conclusions, for listeners and customers out there about the stuff that you should focus on. So with that, we'll wrap up another one of our Techstrong research reviews. I think this is the third episode, if I'm okay accounting. So
reach out to us on info@techstrongresearch.com.
Info@techstrongresearch.com. If you want to kind of focus any bit on what you're doing or kind of share some of your experiences, that would certainly be appreciated. So until next week, Mitch, be well, and we'll see you guys soon.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Pete Lund, who is Vice President of Product for OT Security at SWAT. And they are a provider of a platform that is applying, I guess for lack of a better phrase, neural networks, also known as deep learning algorithms, to securing these OT networks. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be here.
Walk us through, if you would, what you guys are up to, because we've been talking about various forms of AI and security with mixed success for years now. Is there something about OT security that lends itself more to this approach? And what exactly are you guys doing?
Sure. So love to touch on that. So Neuralizer, our newest, OT cybersecurity offering, complementing, much of the other comprehensive things we do in OT. Really kind of what makes Neuralizer different is our approach is not only, leveraging machine learning like others out there, but it's very, very, very easy to use. So we use some of those machine learning strategies to present users the events and anomalies that really matter, the ones that really stand out based on our neural approach, which, kind of mirrors the human learning process. So as you interact with the tool, give us more tips and tricks on, was that something of interest? It learns and kind of gets smarter right along with you.
How do I implement that? Is it a service that you're logging into? You're pulling data from my network? You're dropping in agents? How do you figure out what I'm up to and what's an anomaly?
Sure. Yeah. So we deploy in a very safe way for OT, because certainly OT can be very sensitive when it comes to things like traditional IT tools. Heavy intrusive scanning or agents often are not acceptable. So we're a very unique appliance. We're deployed very much like an HMI would be in the environment. So a single kind of all-in-one piece of hardware form factor that has active and scanning capabilities built into it. And we leave it up to the customer to choose whatever is best fit for their environment. So if it's a very sensitive network, we can do simply just passive monitoring only. So looking at, span, tap, mirror style traffic. If you're more comfortable, a little bit more advanced, or have devices that are friendly for, an active polling mechanism, we have that built into the appliance as well. It's just as simple as turning it on and giving us, connected routed connections to devices where we'll do things like poll for ENIB SIP or, Siemens S7 Profinet, some of those traditional protocols that are safe to poll as long as you're doing it in the way the industrial OEM designed, which of course we are.
What is the current state of the security maturity for OT folks out there? They're kind of a different animal than your average IT community. And of course, there's always been issues between security folks and IT folks that go on for decades now. But what is the state of the relationship between security and OT folks these days?
Sure. I'd say it's a slow and steady trust building that is kind of getting somewhat forced by, recent events, things like Russia, other, more recent attacks like Colonial Pipeline, Old Smarwater. And we're now seeing folks at the very least getting to let's at least share data, share the right data at the right time. IT is never going to fully understand OT. And vice versa, but they've at least agreed that we've got to have good visibility, good commonality. We need to kind of bond together to ultimately fight and beat that adversary, right? Because they're not going to stop. And with them leveraging machine learning and other technologies, we have to get smarter in our defenses. You've got, the kind of market breaks up into a few different ways. You've got the folks who aren't very mature at all. They haven't really started that visibility journey, which is the first kind of step in, understanding the size of the problem. How do I eat the elephant, as you say, one bite at a time? And it's really start with visibility. That gives you a good picture of, what does my network look like? Who am I normally communicating with? Oh my God, I didn't realize I had, vendor remote access enabled there. That's kind of that foundational, what do my assets look like? What do my networks look like? And the nice thing about Neuralizer, it's a good starting point, and certainly there are other solutions out there. But the big thing with OpSWAT is once you get that visibility, we have a whole suite of products that brings you up that maturity curve. So once you've kind of established visibility, we've got an industrial firewall product that you can put into, actually secure those last mile devices. We've got a data diode technology where you can actually help segment IT from OT and do some safe one-way data sharing. We've got our own secure remote access platform that was designed around OT. And then we get all into kind of the file scanning and transient asset protection. So the great thing about Neuralizer, it is that starting point that most organizations either have done or are considering. And the great thing about OpSWAT is we help you kind of graduate into, fully mature, full-time SOC staff or outsourced stock, really kind of covering the gamut of that maturity curve.
We've seen a couple of high-profile attacks recently. That, of course, got some attention of the folks in Washington and other governments. Do you think that we're going to see a lot of regulations coming down the pike that are going to force some of this OT security conversation?
Yeah, we certainly do see, happenings in the regulation space. I'd say the results so far have been mixed. One thing about regulation is it certainly does drive maturity to happen, maybe not the most efficient way or the best way, but we saw utilities, adopt NERC-CIP a number of years ago. And, security and compliance are certainly not the same thing, but they do interact. I would say some of the latest regulations from, TSA were a little bit rushed, and they kind of pulled back on those and kind of revised them. But I would say kind of advice to folks is we have really good standards like the NIST cybersecurity framework, the NERC security framework, ISA, IEC. All of those are kind of core and fundamental to securing your environment. If you simply just get proactive and follow them, you will start to get yourself out of harm's way. So as much as the government can help with kind of revised standards and what to focus on, we've done a ton of investment in the NIST standards, and they are really world-class.
Do you think that we'll see malware moving laterally from OT networks to IT networks as things become increasingly more integrated? And will security people have to figure out some way to kind of bridge those two policies and environments?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've seen some of that kind of happen already, specifically if you consider, building automation part of the OT space. So buildings are oftentimes, HVAC controllers, lighting controllers can be not as secure or somewhat forgotten. We're seeing attackers enter those spaces and then pivoting over into corporate IT networks, or maybe networks that have domain trusted, or maybe were implemented in a flat, non-segmented way. So that is certainly something to watch out for. But certainly IT is generally the easiest way. And just because you have a lot less control in place, you have a lot more, human factors at risk. Generally speaking, folks aren't opening, those phishing emails while on the OT side of the house. There's just kind of less general overall attack space in OT. But certainly once they get in, and if you've got a good connected network between the two that's not segmented with a data diode, for example, then yeah, you have to worry about that. And we're seeing more of OT start to connect to the cloud from an operations standpoint. So some of those technologies that are used in historians, where when you do have to make that IT and OT break, you're still able to get kind of production information up and out to the cloud. And that's going to be another new threat vector, especially as we get into things like renewables and distributed energy. Kind of as 5G also kind of plays into this, we've got more and more connectivity coming into various pieces and parts of OT, and we have to be worried about protecting it.
Do you think that the people who are attacking these networks, are they your average run-of-the-mill cybersecurity people, or are they more like nation state folks and their level of sophistication is a lot higher than some of the attacks you might normally see against, say, your average school system or whatever?
Yeah, I would say probably the latter. So since OT is very high stakes, it's not a typical, kid next door or a group that's looking for, a quick ransomware style payout. These are folks that want to stay embedded in systems and strike when, the worst possible time. So as part of an act of war or as part of, corporate earnings, really hitting the company at the right time. So it is that very, very advanced nation state attack or group style attack.
Every now and again, there's an attack and everybody stands up and says, this time for sure is a wake-up call. Everybody's going to respond. And then a lot of people kind of roll over and hit the snooze alarm and just go back to business as usual. So are we seeing a lot more focus on OT security these days, or has it kind of been yet another instance where there's a couple of attacks, but now everybody's kind of just going back to whatever they were routinely doing before?
I think we are starting to get slow and steady progress, and I would say slow and steady has always been the way OT adopts technologies. Certainly the attacks are becoming more frequent. Granted, they're not always finding their way into OT. So Colonial is a great example where, they certainly had a very good stronghold in IT. OT was generally not impacted, but they did have to shut operations down from a precautionary standpoint. We're also seeing things like cyber insurance come into play, and that is kind of forcing folks to mature a bit from an organizational standpoint. We're seeing a lot more assessments and audits and people kind of getting ready to make those bigger cybersecurity investments. So we're seeing audits and pen tests on the rise, and certainly lots of interest in all forms of kind of cybersecurity product and OT. It's a very kind of strong market to be in, and OpSWAT kind of leads that space when it comes to that end-to-end visibility to how we actually put protective controls in place. But that's kind of the big thing. We're kind of through the asset visibility wave, and kind of the second wave of OT security as we're seeing the market mature is getting deeper in that inventory, understanding vulnerabilities, looking at the secure SBOM makeup of things. That's kind of the next place as we understand vulnerabilities and how they impact. But really the whole market needs to get to putting those protective controls in place. And we're certainly getting there. We're seeing some of the convergence, or as I like to call it, some industries will never be truly converged, but that data sharing aspect and good quality visibility is it's kind of like table stakes. If you don't understand your assets, there's really no excuse anymore. There's tons of great products out there, and then services you can leverage to even do it yourself.
So what is that one thing you see folks doing from an OT perspective that just makes you shake your head and go, I can't believe we're still doing that?
Yeah, lots of good choices there. But I think the thing that gets me the most is kind of the trust level of your vendors, right? So when you're, come in from your favorite, ABB, Yokogawa, Honeywell, the trust level of the vendor is still very high. They're not put through enough rigor on the inbound sort of, whether it's bringing in removal media, making a network change. There's that inherent trust is good, but it needs to be a trust but verify, because oftentimes we're seeing, the outsiders or the third parties ultimately be the reason why that industry or company is compromised, especially when it comes to secure remote access. You can still find many, many devices on the public internet, which really shouldn't be. And it's oftentimes dialing back to someone needing that access, but it hasn't been set up correctly. It's not managed, it's not logged, and really no one has visibility to it.
All right. As they say, sometimes the biggest enemy is us. So we'll see if we get better at this as we go along. And hopefully some AI will get us down the path a little bit faster. Hey, Pete, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, back to you in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with John Geeter, who's Chief Product and Technology Officer for Archivist. They specialize in a lot of blockchain technologies, but today we're not just talking about blockchain, we're talking about how to secure the software supply chain using blockchain. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you.
We've been talking about how to better secure the software supply chain probably for years now, ever since there's been some major breaches. And the question keeps coming back, how do we know who did what when, and how do we make the supply chain immutable? And that naturally leads to a lot of conversations about blockchain, but how will all this come together? Because not a lot of folks have a blockchain platform. So how do you see these two things converging?
Yeah, I mean, an awful lot of it has to do with a bit of will and a bit of sort of shared understanding in the industry, really just maturing. So, yeah, like any supply chain, the software supply chain depends on a number of people kind of coming together, sharing evidence, and then understanding what that evidence means so that you've got a collective idea of, as you said, who did what when, where did the risk kind of end with one company and come into another company, and then how do I trust that end artifact, whether it's a manufactured piece of electronics or whether it's just a pure piece of software, how do I know that it's been created correctly? And so what's happening now in the industry with software bill of materials, with the guidance coming out, particularly from NIST and CISA in the US, but there's some similar stuff happening in Europe, is a growing understanding of getting right down to the fundamentals of how the software is produced, how it's handled, how we stay on top of vulnerabilities and things being discovered, and then how we act on that information to stay safe. And so what we're starting with the software bill of materials is this really simple basic building block. It's kind of ingredients list of what's in the box, what's in my software. And if you know what's in your software, you can kind of take control of the rest. So all of those things like Log4j, for example, that came up, or the Kaseya or the SolarWinds, pick any of your sort of celebrity breaches. The very first thing you want to ask if you wake up in the morning and the news is running this big kind of cybersecurity story is, oh my goodness, do I have Log4j in my estate? And before the S-bombs came along, before we had this kind of shared understanding of the ingredients list for your software, you just didn't know. You had to wait for somebody else to tell you. So it's just sort of step one of this mature supply chain process. And then where technologies like blockchain or platforms and evidence registries and that kind of thing come in is providing a way for people to get access to that information reliably. So I know it's there when I need it. And maybe when I need it is kind of on the day it's sent to me. But more likely when I need it is several days, weeks, even years in the future when something happens, that I need to go back and get it and make sure that it hasn't been shredded, that there's nothing been inserted and backdated. People can't delete things and hide them from me when they become embarrassing. And that's where the two things come together. It's like super important information and reliable, secure delivery of that information to the right people at the right time.
The perception is that blockchain is hard to implement and maintain. So when do you think this might all be feasible?
Well, I mean, I'd have to say, from my perspective, it's feasible now. We at Archivist, we do that already today by kind of wrapping up the blockchainy stuff with APIs and kind of familiar access control. I mean, something that happens rather often is that blockchain in general gets very quickly sort of put together with Bitcoin type philosophies and memes and things. And something that's very true and very interesting in things like Bitcoin is this idea of not your keys, not your crypto. And so you will find corners of the internet who laugh at people who have their Bitcoin stolen, because it's like, well, you put it on an exchange or you put it on some kind of cloud wallet. If you don't own and control those cryptographic keys yourself personally, then you're not in control of that thing. And that's, if you've got a lot of time on your hands and you're a very specific, exquisite expert in things like that there's some mileage in what they're saying there, but it's not practical, because you can't expect everybody in the entire world to have full control over every possible detail of their technical life, not only keys, but their access controls and their policies and all that sort of stuff. It's just too much. It has to be packaged up and delegated and presented in a way that's feasible. And so what we're doing, and quite a number of other people in the industry now are coming together to do, is to wrap up these principles, core principles of sort of immutability and security, which sit under blockchain, but make them available with a familiar traditional ID system, so that you don't have to do your own keys for your own crypto. You just log in with your two-factor device like normal, and you get in. And dealing with things like simple APIs and user interfaces that present the information in a way that's actually kind of actionable and understandable without requiring a PhD in computer science to get under the covers. So undoubtedly, lots and lots of more work to do, more innovations coming, more standards coming into the marketplace that kind of broaden the appeal. But I have to say, in sort of short answer to your question, that it's available now. There are platforms out there that can offer you this kind of immutable, shred-proof, verifiable supply chains.
How will we operationalize SBOMs? I think at this point, people have the concept that, we have a list of ingredients here that are in the components. A lot of times those components are updated and changed, and a lot of times people are trying to figure out, so if I get all these different SBOMs, how am I going to actually turn that into something that is intelligence that we can act on? And so what would the workflow look like in your mind, and how is that all going to come together?
Yeah, that's the question, I think. Great question. So it's got to be automated, and it's got to be integrated into existing workflows. Something that I really enjoy. I was talking last week to one of my own DevOps engineers, the guys who actually kind of build and keep my company going. And one thing that he said he really kind of enjoys about using our product and our platform is that he just inserts a single line of code into his existing workflows, and then the whole thing's audited and the whole thing's verifiable, and he just doesn't have to think about it anymore. And so we've got, on the kind of producing side, a number of ways. It's not just us. This is a sort of growing market, really, of being able to produce and publish this stuff with a one-liner in the workflows that already exist. So you use Microsoft DevOps, for example, just put it in your template and off it goes. It's done. So then operationalizing on the other side, that's the bit where it's a work in progress. Let's say. We're seeing a growing number of SOAR tools. These are the security automated orchestration response tools, starting to read software bill of materials, look for things that look a bit spicy, and alert their users, or kind of do some trust scoring, that kind of thing. But we need to have a lot more of that. So a lot more automation on the inbound side, so that when you install a piece of software, when you take an update, maybe if you have machines or software accessing your enterprise network and making privileged requests, at that point, you need to be able to look inside the contents of that machine actor, see if there's anything in there which has just recently become discovered vulnerable, and make a real-time contextual decision on it. So I think there's two things really that need to happen. There's integration into these tools and workflows on the consumer inbound side. That's one thing, and that is starting to happen. We have some pretty interesting use cases out there with zero trust IoT device access, for example, based on SBOMs and vulnerabilities. We need to do much more of that. But the other thing that needs to happen, which is a bit more of a mindset shift, is doing this constantly. You need continuous assurance, because just because your software hasn't changed, it doesn't mean that the context hasn't changed or the environment hasn't changed. So you could be perfectly happy one day, nothing changes in your estate, but the environment or the attack context or a newly discovered vulnerability suddenly changes the arithmetic and the risk judgment on letting that software into your facilities anymore. And so those two things are what really needs to grow in order to properly operationalize SBOMs.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where we have the equivalent of, say, like a red light, green light for when somebody submits an application? We'll be able to just look at it and say, this has vulnerabilities that are unacceptable, risk, this has a component that we don't want to use, and we'll be able to just have that immediate analysis before we decide to run this thing in a production environment?
I think we will, and we do. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have some partners doing that already, and I know there are other players out there also doing it in similar ways. It's just not very widespread right now. So the kind of thing that needs to develop on that side is the standards. So it's easier to exchange these documents. The critical thing with software bill of materials is that there's no point in having one unless it gets to the right place at the right time to make exactly those decisions you mentioned. And so we obviously need the standards for moving them from one place to another, and then for understanding what they mean when they get there. And that's developing, that's coming, and that will grow the breadth of the thing. But then the next thing that we really need to do in order to kind of get red light, green light is to understand the context. So I've been working in this space for well over 20 years now. And the best that we had heretofore was CVEs, so the Corn Vulnerability system, and CVSS, which is the vulnerability scoring system that tries to give you an idea of how dangerous something is. But the problem with that has always been that it's kind of black and white, and it says this is either dangerous or it isn't. This is bad or it's good, and it didn't make it very easy to take context into account. So if I've got a piece of software and it has a vulnerability in it, but that's inside a box which is wrapped up in a different interface, which is installed in a facility which has barbed wire and armed guards and isn't accessible, well, maybe my priority on my cyber fixes should be somewhere else, which is accessible, even if it's a technically lower risk thing. And each person has to take their own risk and their own circumstances into account. And that's what's been missing. And enabling, rather than a red light, green light, enabling something which is like a constant amber, but then tells you where to look and helps you to actually prioritize the daily work of keeping a facility safe and secure. That, I think, is where we're going to. That's not here yet. But when we get there, and I think we'll get there pretty soon, it will make the world considerably better, because now people can assess their own risk, they know their own value, and they can actually do the right thing rather than just kind of reacting blindly to the latest great big red button vulnerability, which may or may not be important to them.
We're going to be collecting a massive amount of data. So where will we store all this stuff? And can we analyze that data in new and interesting ways we haven't thought about?
That is a fantastic question. So, the SBOM stuff comes out of a wider initiative for sort of zero trust architectures. This is where a lot of the wind is blowing right now. And in all of the kind of directives and the literature and the guidance that we're getting from NIST and CISA and others, it isn't just the software bill of materials that needs to be transmitted. There's also kind of letters of attestation from people to say, I have created this in a good way. There are what they call lifecycle process artifacts, or I built it in this way and it was signed at this time, all of that kind of information. And one of the other things that is really positive for a zero trust approach to security is that you gather information from all kinds of places. You want to go to the best, most knowledgeable source for the information you need right now. And, if you want to know the time, you ask an atomic clock. But if you want to know the weather, you go ask a weather station, right? You don't cross them over, you go to the right place. And if you don't trust that weather station, you ask 3. Just in case one of them's compromised, and now you kind of spread your risk. And all of these zero trust concepts do rely on getting data from a lot of different places. So where it will be stored, everywhere, probably. Sometimes you'll have duplicate copies of things, sometimes they'll be centralized, sometimes they'll be on beacon services. I think that's a little less interesting in this context than how you trust it. Because what's emerging as a kind of new core pillar of data-driven services and connected industry, all of what's going on behind these initiatives, is that you need to know the provenance of what you're dealing with. It's not so much what it is, but where did it come from, who made it, who sent it to me, which could be different things, and why do I trust it right now in the context of the critical decision that I'm making. And so the key thing that we're tackling, the technologists on the sharp end of this question, the key thing we're actually tackling is how do we make a layer and a set of services and a set of standards where you can actually validate that thing. So no matter where it comes from, you can do a check, you can do an attestation or a verification on that piece of data that's coming into your estate and say, yes, I know where that comes from. I know why I trust it. And this is actually making my decision making better, rather than the rather sad situation we have in many cases today, where actually data coming into your organization has the opportunity to poison your decision making and actually sort of sell you a bum steer, if you like. So that's, where the data lives doesn't really matter. I think we have to be open to getting it from everywhere, but where the attestation services live, and where and how we transmit that integrity information, that's the big challenge that we're all chewing on right now.
Do you think someday we'll be applying machine learning and deep learning algorithms to that data once we start aggregating it all? I mean, what kind of AI can we get? How smart can we get?
Absolutely. I mean, one way I sometimes like to think about this whole puzzle is that rather than doing something completely brand new and revolutionary, what we're doing is good old-fashioned best practice, but just at much, much higher scale. So if you think about things like software bills of materials, that's always existed. And a nice comparison here is with things like food labeling, where the software bill of materials is kind of like ingredients on a packet. So if you have a nut allergy, you want to look at those ingredients and just check there's no nuts in there. And for some people, that's okay, it's good enough. But for other people, actually, you also need to have that kind of process handling statement that says, prepared in a factory that may have previously prepared nuts. And if you're that sensitive, actually, that's a problem too. You need that extra bit of information. And so, in that sense, these kind of handling artifacts and all the software lifecycle stuff that's coming through is only a reapplication of best practice from all kinds of other places where we're already mature and sensible. And so we're trying to just scale it up so that you can do all of those kinds of checks without having to hire another 3 global populations worth of people to do all the paperwork and check and visit the factories and hold clipboards and things like that. So with the AI, it's a similar challenge, right? What we're trying to do is really speed up the process of taking 100 different documents, reading them all instantly, finding that needle in the haystack, which is the important security vulnerability to us in our context, and then flash a beacon on the dashboard of the honest, regular workaday security engineer who then goes and fixes that thing. So, two things that are definitely happening for AI helping are that massive scale analysis of all the data and looking for anomalies. That's a good thing. And also, there are some companies working on cyber threat intelligence, of actually kind of natural language reading through these cyber threat reports, because a really time-consuming thing for our expertise and these very rare kind of cybersecurity experts who can actually read and understand that report and work out what it means is the time to simply get and read all these reports and then decide what to do about it. It's like it gets to 4:30 in the afternoon and now I can start work. So the AI is actually reading those, picking out the salient points and feeding the experts faster, better quality information so they can spend more of their time actually doing their job rather than working on administration or reading. So those are 2 really encouraging developments that are happening right now.
All right, great. So what's your best advice to folks? Because I think a lot of people are scratching their heads about where to get started.
Yeah, so definitely operationalizing SBOMs and software supply chain stuff is tricky. There are a lot of mandates out there, but not a lot of actionable guidance. So don't try to do it manually. I think this is the first thing. SBOMs look deceptively human readable because they're in this sort of beautiful structured XML with English language words in. Do not attempt to read them manually. It won't scale that way. So you've got to lean on your tools vendors to start consuming the SBOMs and adding them to your automation workflows. And some people are already doing this. It is starting. So it's a matter of just applying that pressure to the tools vendors to take this seriously and add the SBOM into their suite of decision-making information. The other thing that you need to look at, particularly short term, is that SBOMs actually are not the first required thing. The first required thing that's coming out of the guidance from the OMB recently is actually these letters of attestation about how the software has been created. So a very simple statement from the vendor saying, I promise I have read the rules and I've complied with the rules, and here is my irrevocable statement. And that irrevocable word is really important. Here is a statement that I make that I cannot delete, I cannot shred, I cannot change later when you come and challenge me, that says, I followed the rules and I've given you the best quality software I possibly can. And so prioritizing those attestations from the vendors and starting to get the promises and the transparency into the supply chain, which is so vital to having trust and security in our cybersecurity. Those are the two things to do: long term, medium term, get on the vendors, get it integrated. Immediate term, get those letters of attestation, start pulling through those promises and transparency so that people get used to the process.
All right, great. Hey, John, thanks for being on the show and sharing your insights.
Well, thanks very much.
All right, guys, back to the studio with you.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had a great slate of interviews with industry professionals to keep you up to date with the latest news. And alongside our airing of the new series, The CD Pipeline, and new episodes of Engineering the Change and Techstrong Research Review, we had plenty of great content today. We'll be back again on Thursday, so we hope to see you then. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.